Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Williamsville Board of Education Community Forum here happening on this beautiful Saturday morning. We are going to begin with a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. My name is Teresa Ann Leatherborough. I'm here as the board president for the Williamsville Board of Education. I'd like to welcome all of you joining us today and hope that we are able to have a productive forum with some great dialogue, answering as many questions and concerns we can that lead us to better student outcomes. I'd like to start off by going down the table and giving each of my board members an opportunity to introduce themselves, and if they wish to say a few words, they may do so. So I will start all the way on my right with Eric Borenstein.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Eric Borenstein. I've been a resident of Williamsville now for about 26 years, and I followed my wife here, who was born and raised in Williamsville. We raised our one daughter here, and she is a product of a fantastic central school district education. I'm retired now, and so I focus mostly on my family. I love woodworking, I do some music, and I focus on the community. I guess the thing that drew me to this position was wanting to help in a very positive and meaningful way, help a community that I care deeply about. And so this being the third year of my first term, it has mostly been very satisfying to do this work. And I'm mostly focused now on getting through these challenges that we're facing and working with this group of amazing board members to help facilitate that through the challenges we face. So thank you. I look forward to being as helpful as I can this morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Beeger. I am now starting my 5th year of service to the Board of Education. I grew up here in Williamsville. I went to Dodge and Casey, and I graduated from Williamsville East. I married a man who went to Country Parkway and Mill, and he's also an East graduate. We decided to stay here and raise our family here because we love the community that we were raised in, and we wanted our children to be a part of that as well. So I currently have 3 children, one at each level. I have 3 boys, one at Heim Elementary, one Heim Middle, and my oldest son is at North High School. When I decided to run for the board, similarly to Eric, I just really wanted to play a part in making our district as positive and as meaningful place for children to receive an education as possible. I had my own children going through, and then there were some concerns that I had at the time about standardized testing and the impact of Common Core, recess or lack of recess at the time, large class sizes, things of that nature. And I wanted to be part of the work to help make our schools as strong as possible. I also recall at the time coming to school board meetings before I was a school board member and wishing that there was more responsiveness on behalf of the school board. And that's something that I think as a board we've tried to work towards doing. So I'm pleased to be here today. It's wonderful to have the opportunity to interact with people, and thank you all for taking time out of your Sunday morning to attend.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Biscaglia. I have grown up in Williamsville my entire life. I went through school here, Maple East, Mill Middle, and Williamsville South. Once I graduated college, I moved immediately back to Williamsville. When I started my family, I have a son that goes to Maple West, a son that next year will be going to Maple West, and a 2-week-old newborn at home. So fun times in the Biscaglia house. This is my first year on the board. I ran because of many people expressing their concerns to me, knowing my background in education, and saying that some things needed to change within the district. And so I threw my name in the hat, and I'm just here to make sure that the community gets what they deserve. And hopefully we're doing that, and we can, you guys can continue to see that we always strive to do that in good times and in bad. So, yeah.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Van Sice. I have been on the board. Now this is my 5th year. This is my 2nd year serving as the Vice President of the Board of Education. So I have a son right now that is a freshman at Williamsville North, and my daughter just was a recent graduate of 2020. And simply the reason why I joined the board 5 years ago, I have always been involved. Since my daughter was in kindergarten, I joined the PTA executive board at Dodge. I still serve as a PTSA parent. I am a liaison as well, but I still serve as committee chairs for many different committees throughout this district. So my volunteer has not stopped. As I became a board member, I chose to become a board member simply to be that much more involved in the process. So I am a liaison, and I am proud of the work that I have done and this board has done in listening to parent concerns, student concerns, teacher concerns, and then working with the district for the betterment of our children. Thank you.
Dr. McKenna, would you like to say a few words?
Oh, sure. I'm John McKenna, the acting superintendent here in the Williamsville Central School District. For the past 3 years, I was the assistant superintendent for human resources. I'm also a resident here in Williamsville and have a daughter who attends East High School, and here to listen and here to do everything we can to make sure our students get the very best education possible.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Leatherbarrow. I have 3 children. One graduated in 2019 from North High School. I have a son this year who is a senior at North, and our youngest daughter is an 8th grader at Pine Middle School. I'm not originally from Williamsville. I grew up in the South Town, and then I lived for 10 years in the city of Buffalo. I also have a lot of work experience teaching in the Buffalo Public Schools. We chose to move to Williamsville because I wanted my children to grow up in a community that was very diverse, but that also had a very high expectation and respect for their education. So we chose Williamsville, and I'm very happy with the outcome and the education that they are receiving. I serve because I am very passionate about public education for all students. To me, it should not matter our zip code, our income level. All children deserve high quality education. A free and appropriate public education should be accessible to all. And so inclusivity and celebration of diversity and diverse viewpoints is very important to me. It's something I will continue to advocate for. I'm happy to be here this morning, along with my colleagues that I serve with. This is my 5th year serving on the board. It's my 2nd term. I served as vice president alongside Sean Monet, and I am now serving as president for the 2nd year. I will continue to do my best, and I will continue to do my best to love your children and provide them with the best educational outcomes that we can provide them with. And I will say that I feel personally to my board, I want everyone on the board to know that I do feel this is the strongest board that I've had the pleasure to serve. So thank you, everyone, and turn it over to Susan McClary.
Good morning. My name is Susan McClary. I've lived in the general Amherst area most of my life, and specifically in Williamsville for about 18 years. This is my 4th year. Excuse me. This is my 4th year on the board. I have a grandson who last June graduated and is now in college. And my background in education and community involvement were what prompted me to decide to seek a spot on the board. And I'm confident that I can use and have used those skills to help improve our school community.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Crystal Kazmarek-Bogner. And unlike most of the people in this room, I did not grow up in Western New York. I moved about every 2 to 3 years with my family growing up. And so for my K-12 education, I actually went to 8 different public schools in a total of 5 different districts. However, there was a time we did live in the Buffalo area and my parents chose Williamsville. For the couple of years that we lived here, I did a year at Heim Middle and I did a year at Williamsville North. I've also moved around as an adult. When we moved back to the Buffalo area, originally my family chose to live in a neighboring district. And after having some time in that district, I decided to move my family to Williamsville so that my children could get the excellent Williamsville education that's provided here. And currently I have a son who is a junior at Williamsville South and a daughter who is a 7th grader at Middle School. I am new to the board this year. I decided to run because I had become very active in this district. Starting with the PTSA, I became very involved in the special education PTSA, which is a district-wide PTSA. And then I had 3 years on their executive board. I became a very active advocate for all of the students in Williamsville, including those students who have special education and gifted programming needs. And I decided that as my next step in my advocacy journey for all of our students and for public education in general, that I would run for the Board of Education. And I was very pleased when I was able to start this year, knowing that it would be a very challenging year, but I felt that I had the skills needed in order to meet this challenge. And I will continue to fight and advocate for all students in our district. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sean LeMay. I've been, this is my 6th year on the board. I have been vice president 1 year and served as president for 2 years. Unfortunately, I am not a native to the Williamsville area. However, I can say that all of my family and children have all been born and raised in the Williamsville area and have been brought up through the Williamsville schools. My youngest daughter now is a sophomore at the University of Buffalo, who is currently experiencing a 100% remote learning process. So I can feel the sympathy pains and see some of the experience from the UB curriculum front. I ran for the board, 6 years ago. There's a lot of concerns back then about open and transparency, excessive testing, APPR, problems with the Common Core, a lot of these things that I think we've done a great job and rectified over the last 6 years. And we continue to work on things like school safety and improvements with special education and things like that. So I'm happy to work with this board. I think this board has been an excellent board, especially this year. It's been one of the better boards that I've ever worked with in my 6-year tenure. And we continue to make and assure that children and their education are the #1 priority of the district prior to anything else. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Mark Mecca. I have been a resident of the Williamsville School District for about 20 years. I moved here when I completed my graduate education. Prior to that, I grew up in the city of Buffalo, where I attended Buffalo Public Schools, graduated from Hutch Tech. I am in my 6th year of board service, like Sean. We ran at the same time for school board. I served as vice president for 1 year, and I chose to join to volunteer my time for the Williamsville School Board because there were a number of concerns at that time, as Sean mentioned. And I wanted to put my public education experience and my public education certifications to use in a productive way to benefit the school district. Also in the year I ran, 2014, was the year that my daughter was born. So that gave me a personal stake in the success of the school district. I currently have a child that's at Maple West in the first grade. I have liked being able to put my skills to use in this voluntary capacity and all of my certifications and knowledge. I'm certified in all areas of educational administration, including school business leader. So I've enjoyed the budgeting process and helping our district remain fiscally stable.
Thank you, Mark. At this time, we're going to have a short presentation, and I want to try to stick and honor our timeline that is on our agenda as much as possible. So I'm going to try and speed through it. Please bear with us as we pull that up. So there you can see on the slide the main duties of our board. We are the governing body of the district. So policy is very important to us. We employ and we monitor the superintendent. We approve our district policy. We oversee the budget, which is $199 million. We propose an annual budget for public vote each spring. All actions of our board must take place at the board table in compliance with open meetings laws. We typically have one board meeting a month. As board members, we do not have individual authority. All board members act in an official capacity only during an official board meeting. And all motions require a majority vote before our board can act. So within a board of 9, a majority vote would be 5 votes in the affirmative. We serve as liaisons to all of our schools, and this list can be found right on our district website. We also have other liaison assignments that we are also assigned to. So we are quite busy throughout the month. We enjoy these liaison assignments because it gives us an opportunity to attend the schools now through Zoom, but hopefully back in person in the future. And that's where we get to see and hear about the work being done within each building, hear from the principal, and most importantly, have conversations with the parent leaders that are elected for each PTSA and get an opportunity to listen and answer to their questions. So if you have not joined your PTSA, please do so. It's such a great way to become involved in your school. Right. I want to show you now just a little bit about how to navigate the district's website. If you want to find BoardDocs, you click on About Us, Board of Education, and that will take you to BoardDocs. This is what will come up. And on the right-hand side at the top, you can click on Meetings. So this is a screencastify right now that's showing you how to walk through, how to access the minutes to one of our board meetings. The best way to get the most accurate information. On the left side, you'll be able to see the full agenda. And if there's a little document tab, you can go ahead and open up the document. So this is an example of the diversity presentation that was part of our board meeting last week on Tuesday. Another feature of BoardDocs is our policy manual right there on the right side. All of our policies are up to date and kept current by our district clerk in BoardDocs. Here's an example of our policy 3110, which is our community relations and public information policy. So as policies are approved and added to, our district clerk always makes sure that they are accurate and uploaded into BoardDocs. We also have access to our school board notes and all of our Board of Education videos. And that's at the library tab. So our library tab, once again, will give you the school board notes. It will also give you access to the videos. I'm showing you some examples using Screencastify. The search tab is an excellent function. Here's an example. You just type in whatever you're looking for. I use code of conduct as an example. And you can then, it'll do a regular search. So anything that has the words in your search phrase will pop up. But often you can find the document that goes along with it. So that's a way to access the code of conduct. I really want to encourage the public to use BoardDocs because it is the way to get the most accurate information. We're in an age where it's real easy to just sort of phone a friend and say, hey, do you know if such and such is true? But it's also really important that we become our own fact finders and fact check information. And using the search function on BoardDocs is one way to do that. Right? I think that takes care of that.
Just click the next one.
Okay, thank you. Right, now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McKenna, who's going to give a quick update on our relaunch program.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Leatherborough. I hope we put this presentation together here for you today because we feel it's helpful information and should answer a lot of your questions proactively. We hope that this is helpful as we go through. First thing we want to talk about with the relaunch plan is it's been up and running. Last week, we started phase 1 of the relaunch plan. October 13th, we got our 5th and 6th grade students in. I know I had the chance this week to visit all of the middle schools to see it in progress, and I'm happy to say that so far so good. The students are in. Technology has been operational. Yep, we've had a couple of bumps in the road, but we've been able to straighten those out relatively quickly. We are excited next week to see the grades 7 and 8 come back in on Monday. And then the week after that, October 26th, the last phase of our relaunch plan, grades 9 and 12, will be coming on. And I just wanted to report to everybody that we are right on schedule with our plan. Some of the things that helped make our plan come to fruition was we put together 4 different committees that really helped make this come to fruition. The first one is the Reset, Relaunch, Return Committee. And that was a committee that we put together to address the immediate situation and develop a plan to get our students into school as quickly as possible and as thoroughly as possible. So that group got together immediately, and we got right to work and put together a very solid plan that is, as you can see, being launched right now. The Make It Happen Committee is actually a committee that's a long-range committee that's looking at virtual learning in Williamsville for the future, because we know virtual learning is something that's not going to be going away. So we're learning from these experiences, and we put together a team that's looking for our district for the future. The Social Emotional Wellbeing Committee we thought was critical because during this time, one of the things we heard very much from all of our parents and our teachers as well is the social emotional well-being of our students and our staff. It was tough during this time, and there's a lot of issues that our students and staff are experiencing. So we put together a committee to concentrate on doing all we can to help and support the social emotional well-being of our students and staff. And the Creative Engagement Committee is one that we felt was important because we've got students that are remote, we've got students that are hybrid, and getting creatively engaged in your school is something that's very important. And we know that when students are actively engaged in their schools, that they're happier, they're more productive. So we put a concentrated effort together to creatively engage all of our students from K to 12 and from remote to hybrid. So this committee, and the hashtag willpower, many of you have seen that, they came up with that initiative going forward, and I thought it was very appropriate, and a lot of those ideas came from our students. So I thank everybody who's been on those committees. Their committee work has been excellent, and it's really moving the district forward. There's a lot of people actively engaged in this process, and their work is appreciated by all of us. The next thing too that I think is very important as we're moving forward, we had to make sure we had professional learning for our teachers. So what we did was to make sure that this model came to fruition, we made foundational training a requirement with our teachers. So what we did is we make sure that our teachers have lesson design for high flex model teaching with ERIE 1 BOCES and community building with remote hybrid students. We have that as required training for all of our teachers because we wanted to make sure that they were prepared to be able to implement the model effectively. And we also get additional support and supportive workshops from ERIE 1 BOCES as well. They've been an excellent partner through this process. We did G Suite training with our teachers. We also put together a catalog of professional opportunities for them to access ongoing professional development as needed. And we have collaborative staff dialogue and conversations on an ongoing basis. And that's how we've been using our Wednesdays as well too. And Dr. Valen is putting together a library of digital resources to help and support our teachers. Because we knew as we move forward in this model, our staff needed the proper resources and support to implement it. I'd like to say we've been doing a full court press of support to make sure our teachers are prepared. Another aspect that was critical as we implemented this plan was the technology. It was important that we had the Chromebooks and laptops that were necessary to launch the plan. We purchased over 2,000 Chromebooks, over 2,000 laptops, and have those prepared. Hotspots, we also heard that we have students that did not have internet access. So we purchased hotspots and we make sure that any student that needs internet access, we're going to make sure that they get internet access. Headsets for instruction. This is one of the things that the committee explored. It is important to make sure that the teachers can hear adequately. So we made sure that we bought headsets for them. Webcams. That was another thing that was critically important to the success of this program. So we bought webcams, and the webcams are excellent. I had a chance to see them in action last week. They are clear. They help the sound greatly, and they've been a big help in implementing the program. We're also purchasing document cameras. Some have come in, and all of them will be in by next week. And we were able to fulfill all of our future requests as well. So we've also got many requests that are out there from our staff. And we've been able thus far to fulfill all of the technology requests. But one of the things we also felt was critical as we did our research was that the technology had to be up to speed in order to effectively launch this program. So we put a lot of time and effort into making sure that we have the right technologies to make sure that the plan is launched as effectively as possible. The next thing too, we wanted to make sure that we heard from the community was extensive communication. We wanted to make sure that we were communicating as much as we possibly could with our community. So what we did was we went to our website and we put together some informative pages. One is the Williamsville Relaunch Plan, and another one is the instructional information page. Now, if you go to these on our website, you'll see that they have extensive information regarding the plan. They contain the plan. They contain FAQs regarding the plan, because what we did is we heard from a lot of the parents questions. So what we did is we put the questions in an FAQ document so that parents can easily access that and have the majority of their questions accessed. We also wanted to give full information about the plan so anyone who needed to could see the information from the plan on these pages. Also, as part of the website, this is on the relaunch plan page. There's middle school and high school information. As you know, the middle school and high school principals did 21 informational sessions combined because we wanted to make sure that our families had the information. The screencasts from those presentations are available on the web pages, as well as the return to school presentations for our families. They're extensive presentations. They give a lot of information, and we encourage all of our parents to look at this information regarding the high flex model and any questions that you may have regarding the transition as we go through this plan. We also wanted to do reach out and make sure that we have extensive communication with families as well. Another area that came from our PTSA was my daily video updates. Now, this was one of the things that the PTSA asked that I would do. They said, could you give us daily update on progress? So what we did was I made sure, one of the things is we made sure that each day we took the most, what we felt was the most crucial information for that particular day, and we put it on the website. We put it on YouTube. We put it on Witsmail. We do either text a message and we put it on Twitter. We've done 19 video updates so far, and we've averaged more than 3,000 views a day. And I thank the PTSA for their suggestion regarding that idea. Speaking of the PTSA, one of the things too is, in addition to the 21 informational sessions, myself and the principals and the Board of Education have been actively engaged in PTSA meetings. I know I've attended at least 4 of them. The middle school principals have participated in at least 7, high school principals 5. Our Board of Education, as they've already mentioned, are the liaisons, and they've been in PTSA meetings. And I've also met with student leaders as well. These sessions have been incredibly helpful. I know myself and the principals and the board have gotten great ideas from the PTSA. We've listened to your ideas. And again, a lot of the things that you see on the website came from your suggestions from these meetings. Things that are directly in the relaunch plan came directly from these meetings. So we will continue to keep meeting regularly with the PTSA to hear your feedback. It has been very important and very helpful, and I thank them for all of their input. In fact, one of the things that they said too was about consistent communication. So based on that, what we did was we put together the new digital weekly newsletter. This is we put this together so that we could get consistent communication for K-12. We relaunched that a week ago, and it was very well received. We wanted to make sure that you're getting consistent communication from each building each week with a consistent format. And this way you can get the information about the school, get information about the relaunch plan, and you can get specific information regarding each individual school. So this was another idea that we've got from our parents to increase communication. And again, we thank you for that idea. We heard you, we implement it, we put it into action, and we've already got a lot of really good feedback on it. And so that's another way that we've been communicating. One of the questions that we've heard many times is how is this different from some of the models that were in the summer? So why we wanted to do this now is make sure that you knew and understood some of the differences between the models that were presented previously and the new HighFlex model that we have right now. We put a committee of stakeholders together that researched and reviewed best practices and also created the guiding principles and essential elements of the plan. We put together over 40 people who worked on this plan. So it was an all hands on deck initiative. And our parents and students provided feedback and made suggestions. At those meetings that I just mentioned, parents and students gave us feedback, and some of that feedback went directly into our plans. It also utilizes a research-based model. What we did also with this is the committee, we met with 5 different school districts. We met with the University of Buffalo. We met with ERIE BOCES. We looked at research from Baylor University. And based on that research, we put together our model. So a lot of time and effort went into building a model that we felt met the specific needs of our district. One of the things we also talked about was screen time considerations with this model. We wanted to make sure that we wanted a model where kids were just not plopped in front of a computer all day long. And the model, the HighFlex model, has kids in asynchronous and synchronous instruction, a small group and a whole group, and a lot of various modes of instruction. So we felt that that was important. This model also uses our Williamsville teachers. Outsourcing was not a viable option for our community and for our committee. And there was some of the things that in the summer we're saying we would use some outside sources, but that was not acceptable to us. It also enables remote learners to take the full schedule of electives. One of the things that was very important to the committee is that our students had access to a full Williamsville education, and the plan that we put together ensured that. Another thing that the Williamsville Relaunch Plan did was the teachers engaged in professional learning, which you can see we put together. That's why one of the first slides I put together was so important. We wanted to make sure that our teachers had professional development, were engaged in the proper learning so that they could create lessons that were appropriate and engage their students in appropriate ways. Again, teachers will make strategic decisions about how to best address the lesson objectives and synchronous and asynchronous methods, and whether it's going to be small group, whole group, or individualized instruction. Another thing that was critical, as I mentioned in one of the previous slides, was the technology had to be up to speed and it had to be ready to go. We had to ensure our technology equipment was in place and that the bandwidth was appropriate. That's why we made sure that we got the Chromebooks, we got the laptops. We got hotspots, we got webcams. We made sure that we had all the equipment necessary. And we have also some extras because we know there's going to be times that laptops might break or things might happen that they don't work. So we also have some backup in case there's problems and issues. So we tried to think of all the technology issues that could go wrong, and we tried to be as proactive as possible. The relaunch plan is a high flex model. It's not live streaming like was mentioned in the summer. Teachers customize instruction and engagement based on the student needs. Students at home will be actively engaged by their teacher and not just watching what's happening in the classroom. It was described at one point as like a window into the classroom. High flex model is much more than that. It's much more engaging. There's not only synchronous and asynchronous and independent, but there's large group, small group, and individualized instruction. And that's why that lesson planning at the beginning of how to design the appropriate instruction was so key to the high flex model, and how to engage the students as a group was so important in the high flex model. So that's why the professional development aspects were key as we implemented this model and put it into place. Here are some of the guiding principles of the relaunch plan. I just wanted to go over this quickly. I know most of you have seen these already, but these are things that were very important to the committee. We needed to maintain the same existing class schedules, which we thought was critical. Every student kept their existing teacher, which we felt was, again, very important, not only for the delivery of instruction, but for the social emotional well-being of our students. Students should also continue to maintain relationship with the students in their class. We felt that that was critical. That's very important at this time with the social emotional well-being of our students. The relationships they have with their students, with their fellow students and their teachers are key. We needed to ensure flexibility for our staff to allow them to take the first steps. That's one of the reasons we chose a high flex model. We just didn't want to pigeonhole teachers to certain ways of teaching. Flexibility was key. We also believe ongoing staff development. So that's why one of the slides I did previously show all the things that we've put together for continued support of our staff through this process. I think I said we put together a whole full court press of support moving forward. High quality instruction with our Williamsville teachers. That was also something that was very important. Access to all programs for all students, whether you're hybrid or remote. All students should have access to all classes, which we were able to do. And of course, flexibility, again, is one of the reasons why we chose the high flex model, because teachers do need to be able to choose whether they're synchronous and asynchronous, small group, whole group, and they need to know how to utilize and bring the groups together, whether you're remote or whether you're a hybrid student. And then the professional learning opportunities. Again, we have so many learning opportunities for our staff, and the ability to provide daily synchronous for students in each class, every day in homeroom on Wednesdays. And we're looking at Wednesdays even right now. Right now it's for professional development, and we're doing a lot of teacher collaboration on those days. They're also doing videos on those days. They're doing screencasts on those days. But Wednesdays is something as the future goes on too, we're going to continue to review and look at that. And a learning model that engages all of our students. And what we did here is we just put together, this is just a graphic we put that kind of visually depicts what the program looks like. So you can see at a glance, all 5 groups and what their overall basic schedule looks like for the week. So one of the things we wanted to just mention at the end is our work doesn't stop. Once we fully phase everyone back in, our committees who put all the work together will continue to meet. We're going to continue to review. We're going to continue to monitor the progress. We're going to make adjustments as necessary. And we're going to continue to listen to your voices, because just like you, we want this plan and our programs to be the very, very best for our students. And I thank you all very much for your suggestions and supports thus far. And look forward to hearing more from you as we go through this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna, for that. And we are going to get started now on answering your questions. The way this is going to work is there are 4 board members who have agreed to facilitate different segments. So board members, why don't we adjust a little bit, and instead of stopping at 10:45 for closing remarks, we'll just continue to take as many questions up until 11 o'clock as possible. Maybe just leave 1 or 2 minutes at the end to thank everybody for being here tonight. So Mary is going to be our first facilitator, followed by Sean, Crystal, and then Mark. We are going to alternate between taking questions that have been previously submitted by email to the Unified Solutions email address. We have those printed, and Susan McCleary will be reading those out. And then we'll flip-flop back and forth between a pre-submitted question and a live question. So we have Mr. Filipowski working our computers, and he will be able to bring up a speaker. When it is your turn to speak, we thank you so much for joining us. We ask that you please demonstrate respect for us. We will give you up to 3 minutes to make any remarks. If you ask multiple questions, please understand we will only be answering one question per individual. So know that ahead of time, you perhaps choose the one question that is most important to you. Your microphone will then be muted so that the facilitator of our board can help to facilitate discussion amongst the board. I also have a statement that I would like to read from our attorney. The Williamsville Central School District Board of Education placed Dr. Scott Martzloff, the superintendent of schools, on leave in September 2020. The board has asked outside counsel to investigate allegations against Dr. Martzloff, including what occurred in the summer of 2020. Having outside counsel investigate these allegations will enable everyone in the district to focus on providing the very best education to all of our students, where our focus should always be. Because the outside counsel's investigation is ongoing, we cannot make any further comment about Dr. Martzloff or matters related to that investigation. So please know that if you do ask a question that is related to the statement that I just read, the board's facilitator will gently remind you that we are unable to answer that. It is our hope and desire to keep our focus on student outcomes. And we hope to have many great conversations today about how our students are doing and what we can do for continuous school improvement. With that, I'm going to ask Mary Beeger to start us off with our first section, and Susan McCleary is going to read one of our pre-submitted email questions. So, go ahead, Susan.
Thank you. As was stated, people had the opportunity to send in questions, and we do thank you for your emails and your comments. Because each person has been allotted the time to ask one question, I will not be reading the entirety of an email. I will focus on the exact question that the person has asked. The first one comes from Sophia Hedgemanowski, and she states, my question is this: are we as taxpayers in the community and parents of students directly affected by the lack of leadership by the suspended superintendent going to find out the results of the investigation into Dr. Martzloff's actions? I do believe, if I may editorialize, that Teresa just read the statement that this falls under the category of a topic that we are unable to give further information at the moment. So, but we do have the commitment that if you sent us an email question, we would talk about it.
You can go by Teresa, I'm fine with that. I just want to add that we honestly do not know the answer to that question. We have to go step by step throughout this process. This is a new process for all of us as board members. But I can tell you that I am receiving excellent guidance throughout this. I have been in regular contact with Lynn Fusco through ERIE BOCES, who speaks directly to Regents Collins at New York State Education Department. And I believe that we'll get to that because someone asked a question about that. So we are having regular communication through NYSED through Regent Collins, and who are acting commissioner right now, correct? Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So that has been very helpful. I've also been receiving guidance from NISBA and from the Erie County Association of School Boards, as well as several of our board attorneys that I speak to regularly. So I do not know the answer to that question. We will have to go through this process first, and we will be able to share with the community whatever it is that we are legally allowed to share. Thank you for that.
Before we move to our next question, I'd just like to chime in as well. I believe that it's our responsibility as board members to make sure that we are doing our due diligence to ensure we are following correct procedure. I'm trying to speak as I as a board member and not speaking for everyone as we, but I know that as a board, we have contacted legal counsel consistently. For us to make a statement like this and say we cannot further comment, I realize some people view this as a lack of transparency. Please understand, we are trying to be as transparent. We're sitting here today to communicate with you all. But if we receive legal counsel that we cannot speak about something, we're going to listen to our legal counsel. We want to do our best to ensure we're following through in our roles as board members and doing what we need to do. So I just want to reiterate that statement that was made about not making further comments. That's not in any way to be secretive or keep anything. We're listening to our legal counsel and ensuring that we're doing what we need to do to follow through this process. So at this time, did anyone else want to answer that? Or are we ready for it to bring in a question from outside? Okay. All right. Our first speaker, or our first, we're not speaking. That's what's nice. Now in a regular board meeting, as always has been, as someone speaks for public expression, we listen to the public expression and we can't respond because it's a meeting held in public. This is different. We created this. This is a community forum where we can answer. So our first person is not a speaker. We're happy to invite you into our forum. Jack Flick, you are our first person today. Go ahead.
Hi, Dr. McKenna and members of the Board of Education, thank you for taking my question. First, I would like to thank Dr. McKenna and his team for taking this district from utter chaos to a point where every child is getting a high quality, equitable education. My concern today, and I think Dr. McKenna started to talk about it ever so slightly, is that the students in this district are not receiving any live instruction on Wednesdays. Before I go any further, I do want to make it very clear that I fully support the professional development of our teachers, especially in these trying times when it comes to teaching in person and remotely at the same time. Having said that, I don't see why the professional development should take a whole day for the rest of the school year. I think that the students really need this education, especially at both ends of the spectrum. The AP students really need it to pass the AP test, and the students that are having trouble really need extra help. And also adding Wednesday would put us more in line with the Clarence School District. You know, they're doing that right now for half days on Wednesdays. So my question is, do you have any plans of adding a half a day instruction on Wednesday? And if not, why not?
Thank you so much for your question, Mr. Flick. That's a great question. I'd like to open up for our board members if you'd like to respond about Wednesdays.
Yep, sure. So I think that that's an example of a question that's directly related to education decisions, instructional decisions. And so that falls under the responsibility of the superintendent to make those recommendations for the district, and where it would be required or if needed, then the board would vote on that type of recommendation. So I don't want to, as a board members, be able to give instructional recommendations, even though my background is in education, and Dr. McKenna knows quite well that I'm very opinionated about my instructional and educational philosophies. We speak regularly about them. I also know my place. And when I am sitting in the role at the board table, I'm not a teacher or a school administrator during that time. I take off that hat when I come to the board table, and I defer to the superintendent, his leadership team, and his exemplary staff to make those recommendations back to the board. So I'm going to ask Dr. McKenna if you would like to comment about the possibility of Wednesdays, because I know that that's a question that is on many parents' minds.
No, sure, I'm glad to comment on that. In fact, I was just talking yesterday to principals about that. Right now, too, just want to clarify that there is some video instruction or some instruction on Wednesdays right now where the teachers are engaging with the students, but it does look different in each class. So there is some already. And here's the thing, because yesterday too, I was talking to a second grade student, believe it or not, I asked him about his Wednesdays and how some teachers are doing it. They're actually breaking up Wednesdays. So they're getting maybe 20 minutes in the morning, another 30 minutes and 20 minutes there. So actually how Wednesdays are being broken up right now is dependent on buildings and teachers. But one of the things that right now, professional development is very important, and the creation of lessons is very important at this time. But I will tell you, as we move forward, we are going to look at Wednesdays, and we are going to make sure that we're utilizing them to the very, very best as we possibly can, because we've had conversations about that as well. So we're open, like one of the things that I think in the last slide, we said we're open to suggestions, and as we move forward, we're keeping all opportunities and all doors open. So right now, Wednesdays are being used in this capacity, but that doesn't mean that as we move forward, they always will be. So I appreciate your suggestion. It's something that we can absolutely consider. And we've already had some dialogue with our administration about that, and I know we'll have more in the future. So we appreciate that suggestion. It is something that we could consider for the future.
Mrs. Van Dyke.
So Dr. McKenna, in saying that, I would also like to make that suggestion. And because I guess it makes sense right now with the PD rolling our students that are in the high flex model going back in. I have heard concerns right now between the elementary, those on Wednesdays that are in the hybrid model are not receiving that instruction where the remote learners are. So that's concerning. But I personally believe, as a parent and as an educator, when our students do return, those that are in the high flex model, back to Wednesdays, and Wednesday is considered an at-home day for everyone, instruction needs to be happening. A half day needs to be put back in, where it's not just the 10-minute community circle. I would love for further discussion and a plan moving into that. Because I do agree, all teachers are differently. And I don't think that that's going to be the answer that everyone's ready to settle on, because then we're just talking about if this teacher isn't doing pre-recorded lessons and doesn't have any asynchronous and it's just independent, or if someone has an hour compared to 3 hours, I would like to see consistency. And I believe after September and October, that by November, we should be able to put back instruction on Wednesdays.
Well, one of the things, like I mentioned, the committee structure that we had before, the committee will be getting back together too. That's the relaunch committee. And what we said is once we get the model up and get it running, we're going to bring the committee back to review to make sure that we're looking at what's working, what's not working, and to take suggestions for how to improve. So we will definitely, as we move forward, take all that into consideration.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mrs. Leatherberg.
One piece of that too is I noticed yesterday that also public schools put out that they're working on a plan to start by implementing the students that need the highest level of support to come in first. And so that's something we could look at as a possibility for Wednesdays too. I can tell you that at my house, Wednesdays is the favorite day of the week. I have a senior and an 8th grader. They really enjoy working independently, and they also aren't happy with having to have such a structured school day in front of their computer screens in their bedroom. So they very much look forward to Wednesdays. They do their check-ins, but then they go through their day and get their work done at their own pace. Now that's an 8th grader and a high school senior that are both performing at a high level and have that ability to work independently. I know our district does such a great job at tracking student data. I know we've even been tracking, which kids are not showing up online. And perhaps we're going to even get to the point where we're doing home visits and knocking on doors and saying, hey, where are you? How come we're not seeing you? We missed you. those are things we need to happen, and perhaps some of those kiddos are the ones that would be able to start off coming in Wednesday afternoons as needed.
One of the things I think you bring up a good point, and this is one of the things the committee, when we first put this plan together, was screen time. And we have to be very conscious of screen time, because that was one of the concerns that came to us is we don't want students just in front of screens, and that's why some of the Wednesday we thought could be some of a break too for screen time with students. So that was some of the original dialogue that we had with the committee. But as I said, we're considering everything as we move forward. These are new plans, these are new ways of doing things, and that's why we're monitoring each step along the way. And I do thank everyone for their suggestions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that was just a letter person, so let's move to our next email question.
Again, I am reminding the people who are tuning in and who have sent us emails that I will be asking one question for each email. So our next person who sent something in is Julie Krasinowski. And she says, seeing it, the avenue being taken and the constant battle between the administrators and the WTA, why did the Board of Education or other personnel not speak up and demand for Dr. Martzloff to attend forums? I have to go back to the other sentence. There were forums throughout Western New York talking about reopening plans. So and demand for Dr. Martzloff to attend these forums, which could have prevented the mess we are in.
Oh, so that, I'm sorry, I thought one question. So to respond to that, I guess first I'll offer to, I have a thought on that too, but I'll offer any board members if you'd like to reply to them first. Sure, Mrs. Van Heis.
I was simply going to say that we are not employees of the district. We do employ the superintendent, but this is our job as Board of Education members. We are not reporting to district office on a daily basis. We do not know when forums are offered. We do not know the availability of the different things that are offered to the employees of the district or to our own employee. Therefore, we were not able to be privy of that information and to put forth any direction to the superintendent. Certainly, we have always encouraged the superintendent to participate and collaborate. That's always been a directive of us, but in this specific case, we are not aware of what forums are being offered, and quite frankly, what the superintendent is choosing to attend and then not attend.
I'd like to follow that up too by just saying, while we can't comment on certain aspects of this question, BoardDocs was shared earlier, and there were several meetings held over the summer. You're always welcome to go back and look at the interaction, the kinds of questions that Board of Education members are asking. Sometimes I think rather than hearing something or making an assumption, to go right to the source and see, what was happening and what the process looked like, it is important to make sure that you're looking at factual details. So as far as questions that Board of Education members may have had along the way with the reopening, I would encourage members of the community, if you're interested, to utilize BoardDocs and look back. All of our meetings and all of our board actions are there for the community to peruse as they wish. Any other responses from Mr. Buscaglia?
In terms of that, when things like this come up, it would just be as the board, kind of their job again is to monitor the superintendent, just as a principal's job is to observe and monitor a teacher in a classroom. When a teacher is observed, they hear a week, 2 weeks, relatively close to that observation of what went right, what went wrong, and it's a process. Just as when we're monitoring the superintendent, it's a process. At the end of the year, we evaluate him on or her on their work throughout the year, and that is something like the question being asked was something that you evaluate on the superintendent at the end of the year when you have all the facts, and that kind of goes into what our job is in terms with the superintendent. Hopefully that kind of answers some of that question. We do that at the end of the year, evaluating his or her performance.
Mrs. Oliver.
Sure, I think also going forward, I learned when I studied education leadership at Niagara University that the success of a school district depends on collaboration. You have to have shared mission and goals. And that does not happen by working alone. That happens through leadership and bringing everyone together. So while we did find out afterwards that some of those sessions that were mentioned in the question weren't attended, I can only look to the future. And I can tell you that after the first 2 days that Dr. McKenna was in his position of acting superintendent, he immediately came up with a game plan to bring in as many individuals as possible. So I think this question was sort of referring to the meeting that happened over the summer at ERIE BOCES, where local superintendents were brought together. And I, as a board member, was notified after that meeting took place that our superintendent had chosen not to attend. And I agree with what Mr. Biscaglia said in terms of giving feedback, which I believe was done. However, I have to say that Dr. McKenna immediately took that information and made efforts to right that ship. He brought in several different school districts within, I think you had like 2 or 3 per day. You had University of Buffalo. I remember seeing the pictures that Nick did with the screencast. You could see the meetings happening through Zoom. Now we as board members don't attend those meetings because, as Suzanne said, we're not employees. We don't come here every single day. But we got the reports from Dr. McKenna that those meetings started happening. And all we can do going forward is make sure that we're going the extra mile to communicate and collaborate. Collaboration is so important to the success of our school district, whether it's collaboration between other school districts and other area superintendents, whether it's collaboration with mental health units, community organizations, our parent community, our PTSA, our student representatives. That's what we want to see. That's what I want to see as a parent and as a board member, because as an educator and as someone who studied administration, I know that that is critical to our continuous improvement. And I don't know, Dr. McKenna, if you want to mention, I know you did already during your presentation about who you've been able to meet with since you were appointed, but if you want to briefly review that.
Sure. Well, we mobilized the teams right away, which we thought that was important. We put together actually, we called it a transition matrix, where we put together a whole series of committees. And also part of it, that one committee you're referring to right now is the relaunch committee, where we did reach out to local school districts, University of Buffalo, ERIE BOCES, and had multiple conversations with our local school districts and to learn from them. And what I want to say right now is really thank you to all of them. They were so helpful, so supportive. We got a chance to talk to their administration. We got a chance to talk to their teachers. We got a chance to see model lessons. It was very helpful and supportive to us as we put our plan together. So cooperation and collaboration, I know, is something that I believe in very much. And it's been very important and essential to where we are right now, working cooperatively and collaboratively within our district and within our region. And we'll continue to do so.
Thank you so much, Dr. McKenna. Were there any other board members that wanted to speak? Mr. Montgomery.
Thanks. So myself and Sean are the 2 longest serving board members currently on this board. And just jumping off of what President Leatherbarrow said, I've never seen the level of collaboration that has existed since the acting superintendent took charge of this process than we did previously. It was unprecedented and amazing, the level of collaboration we had internally and externally. And that affirms for me our decision to place Dr. McKenna in the acting superintendent role, because he has really put us back on track in a timeline that was impressive. So I'm very excited that he is making things happen in a collaborative way. The one thing I do want to say too is that perception usually trails behind reality. And I think the perception now of our district and of our board is that things are a mess. But I don't think that that's the reality.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maka. Appreciate your comments and your thoughts. So when we figured out this format, we are going from email to person, and we also wanted to take turns facilitating. I've been facilitating for about 20 minutes now. Our next speaker will be Terry King, and Mr. King or Reverend King, after you speak, we're going to have Sean LeMay be our next facilitator. So thank you all for the opportunity to facilitate, and I'm going to pass that over to Mr. LeMay. Thank you.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, my question focuses on the 6-foot rule. In listening to one of the presentations that Keith Boardman had presented, he spoke about the limitations in the buildings and the state's 6-foot rule being really the overarching limitations on returning kids to the seats. Is the school board and can the school board this morning commit to, if the 6-foot rule on the state level is removed, really working hard to get the kids back in the classrooms? Is that something that the district has as a priority? And how does that limitation play in the future planning to transition from high flex back to full-time engagement in the seats? If that rule is removed or the 6-foot rule is limited downward?
Thank you, Mr. King. The school district has to operate within the guidelines of the state law. So currently the state law states that we have to be 6 feet and wearing masks in the school, in the classroom. So I think the question really boils down to is what the state law is. And Mr. King, to your question, if the state law was to change, I think you'd find that the school districts are going to start to adopt to whatever that new law and whatever those restrictions may be. So if the state lifts the 6-foot barrier and allows for school to come back to session, I think the school district's going to look at moving in that direction as quickly as possible. Any of my colleagues here want to further comment on that? We'll start with Mike.
Yeah, in terms of what Ms. LeMay said, the original thought was that it was masks for 6 feet. That was changed in July. There was an article in the Buffalo News stating that the New York State Health Department, the governor's office, and NYSET, which is the New York State Union of Teachers, not the WTA, they made a decision that it includes and, so 6 feet and masks. If those were lifted, just as I've spoken with different school districts, one where I work in and others districts, and I'm sure Mr. McKenna would feel the same, or Dr. McKenna would feel the same way, we would definitely move forward into getting the students back in as quickly and swiftly as possible. And I would be pushing and recommending that as a board member to Dr. McKenna.
Mrs. Van Sice.
I was going to say the same thing. I know the direct question was, would we, as a board or individual board members, be in support of that? 100%. We are restricted right now. I know that there's been conversations about going out to the state governance and trying to, receive some answers and put the push there, because I do believe many districts and many of us, I can speak for myself, yes, we would absolutely like to see students return on a more regular, consistent basis. I'm not ready to settle for new normal. Is not a new normal for me. I would like to, within time, I would like to go back to what was normal. So yes, I would be recommending that and supporting that as well.
Mrs. Leatherborough.
I just want to draw the comparison to like our daycare centers and our child care facilities. As I've shared, my children are older and I don't have to do that any longer because they are able to care for themselves and be home on their own. But I'm the oldest in my family of 4 siblings, and so all of my siblings are going through this right now in neighboring school districts, and it's quite a challenge. And I see it as very frustrating because it's become an added expense to then have to put your child in childcare or daycare, where that 6-foot rule isn't required to be followed. And so I looked into why that was, and my understanding of it, and please, board members, correct me if I'm wrong, I go back to government and just the different departments. We're following the education department guidelines, where our child care centers and our daycares are following Department of Social Services. So they have different guidelines that they get to follow. Now, in my mind as a parent, does it make sense to me that if my kid goes to daycare and is probably more apt to put their fingers in their hands and nose and mouth and other body parts, that they wouldn't have to be 6 foot apart and not wear the mask? My heart goes out to parents in that situation, because I think it's brought a tremendous amount of stress knowing that your child might actually be safer in school than they are at a daycare. And I know that many of us don't have any other option, that we have to choose that as a way to, make sure our kids are supervised during the day, because some of us have to go back to work, and that doesn't mean always working from home. So I see this as sort of a conflict within our government system. I know we have an email question later coming up about who can you contact, what government reps can you contact regarding this, and I believe when we get to that, Suzanne Vincey said she had some information about who the reps were. Oh, Dr. McCleary, thank you. We'll share exactly who to contact to advocate for those changes. I would, if the guidelines changed, I would also be recommending to Dr. McKenna that we be able to bring more students back to school. I chose the high flex or hybrid, as it was when I chose it, for my students. And I'm someone that has a pre-existing and serious medical condition, and I'm immunocompromised. So I see all sides of that. I still chose the hybrid and high flex model for my students, because I believe in living fully each day. And I see the advantages for them to be in school. It's a decision that each parent has to make. And I also want our parents who chose remote to feel fully supported in that decision, and to know that the quality of instruction that their children are receiving, even if they choose to stay fully remote for the entire year, will remain an equal priority for the board and for our superintendent. We are not giving special treatment to one group of students over another. And it makes me sad when I see division within the community or comments on social media made against parents who chose one model versus another. It's a very personal decision. Every parent has the right to parent their child as they see fit, as long as they are providing safety and food and all of the things that our children are entitled to under the law. So I thank you, Reverend King, for your question.
Thank you. I'm going to try and pick up the pace here, because I know we have a lot of questions, a lot of hands are raised, and a lot of emailed questions still to get to. Dr. McCleary, can you read us the next question?
Yes, actually, I'm going to skip down one because it connects with what Teresa was talking about. And so some of you may want to get your pencils and paper out, because I'm going to give you some information. We had an email from Erin Belia, and she states, would you be able to provide good contact information for local state legislators and agencies that we as parents and taxpayers can write to in order to advocate for lesser restrictions on schools and social distancing? So I will start with a comment that in speaking with our legislators on various occasions over the years, it has been conveyed that parents are the people that can be very influential to legislators. They want to hear from their voters, from the people who actually have questions and comments that are specific to their lives. And so we have advocated and asked that anybody who has the opportunity to voice an opinion to please do so. And so I'm going to give you a quick list of our representatives. I am not going to take the time to give addresses. If you Google any of these names, the first thing that will immediately come up is their local address, their state address, their email address, and so forth.
Maybe we could put it on the district website.
We can also do that, yes. Okay, so quickly, our US, on the federal level, our US senators are Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer. In Congress, it's Brian Higgins for the 26th and Chris Jacobs for the 27th. On the state level, for District 61, which is what Williamsville is in, currently, the senator is Michael Ranzenhofer, who is not running for re-election. So after January, it will either be Jackie Berger or Ed Rath. 0.9% of the district is overseen by Senator Tim Kennedy, but the district is mainly currently with Senator Ranzenhofer. Same thing in the assembly. The majority of the district is overseen by Karen McMahon, who is running for re-election. So after November, it would be Karen McMahon or Robin Wolfgang. And a very small percentage of the district, like 12%, is Michael Norris or Monica Wallace. So those are the representatives. And we do encourage you on any topics to reach out to them with your questions and comments.
It's important too. I want to add that I've met with a lot of these individuals, especially this past summer. I met with Congressman Jacobs, Congressman Higgins, Senator Schumer, Senator Gillibrand. And I'll tell you, the underlying thing that they'll all tell you as parents in the community is to reach out to them one-on-one. Pick up the phone, schedule a meeting in their office. While I love the idea of these chain emails or these chain letters that come out that you can just quickly sign your name to it, every politician I've ever met with has been the first to tell me that they don't necessarily work very well. When they get 100 letters that are all saying the exact same thing, it kind of gets put onto the side. It's not that they're not listening, it's just it's not as effective as if you write a letter that you personally pour your heart into and give your specific circumstances. That letter will get read, whereas 99 of those 100 letters are not going to get read. They're going to get just simply filed to the side. So I can't stress enough how important it is to personalize your email, your letter, pick up the phone, schedule a meeting. These people do want to listen and talk. And me being an advocate for the last 6 years now with these various politicians, that's the underlying thing, is they need to hear from the public, not just me as a school board member, which I'm very advocate, I do it very loudly, but they want to hear from the community and whatnot. Anybody else want to add to this? Yes, Crystal.
Yeah, so I just would like to add that prior to being a board member, I did a lot of advocacy. I had phone calls with my legislators. I met with some of them in person. I wrote letters. You don't always get the response that you're asking for, but it certainly helps. And the more people that do that, when you feel passionately about something, the more likely you'll see change. So I do, again, reiterate what others have said here and reach out personally to your legislators if you feel passionate about something.
Okay, moving on. We're going to go back to the live forum. We've got Mr. Jonathan Rich next.
Good morning. My question's already been answered. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Do we want to grab somebody else in the live forum?
Yes.
Margaret Torella? I can hardly see the screen here. I think that's it, right? Margaret Terrell?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, she's sitting next to me. I'm her husband, Tim.
Okay, hi, Tim. Go ahead.
Hello. So I'm going to read my so I don't get off track here. So I'm a Williamsville parent and father of 4 school-age children, UPK, 6th grade, and twins in 10th grade. Our children have received an amazing education thus far, and in fact, our twins are high-functioning autistic who started in self-contained classrooms and have, with immense help of teachers, progressed to integrated co-taught classes and non-special ed classes. In fact, they have both been on the honor or merit roll every semester of middle school and high school so far. Their amazing growth is a result of the great teachers and aides, as well as the hard work we've done here at home. So truly a big thank you to Williamsville for your high quality educational model. Our family also understands the circumstances in March where the pandemic was thrust on us and the school district did their best to react to the situation. However, this semester is not looking like our boys will continue their amazing progress due to being virtual most of the days. The virtual environment does not allow for the face-to-face support that their IEP allows them to have. In fact, they have had only 1 quiz so far, and the boys say that though they seem to be getting good numeric grades, they don't feel like they're really understanding things. With their disability, they get easily distracted. Even though we have a dedicated space for all of our kids, there are no external distractions, TVs or anything. And they need to be in school in order to learn. So just yesterday, we received an email from the principal stating that they can go to school on Wednesday for an hour and a half for additional help. And while we appreciate that, as we move forward, we believe, and the boys agree, that they really need to be in school every day in order to better absorb the content. So here's my question. Can our boys attend their classes in person on the opposite days of their high flex to get proper access to their IEP allowed supports?
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to take that one?
I'll talk about that a little bit. Actually, I was discussing similar situations with Mr. Scanzuzzo yesterday and a few of our principals. They are looking right now, I know, to get students back in on Wednesdays. So I'm glad to hear that your students are getting in on Wednesdays. But also, some of the schools are looking to do that. I know that Mr. Wall at Transit, I know, is looking to find ways to do 4 days with students. The other buildings are as well, but it's space dependent right now. So there's space constraints that are in the buildings. But I can tell you that the principals with Mr. Scanzuzzo are exploring those options right now. But it's going to be, and this is, I actually have notes right here from, this is a direct conversation I had with him yesterday. It's going to have to vary by building. It's dependent on space. It'll look different at every building. And they're going to have to do it building by building, literally class by class, space dependent. But I will tell you that Mr. Scanzuzzo, and this was his words to me, he's fearlessly advocating for students with IEPs. And I told him that I would write that down. And if somebody asked, you asked almost the exact question we were discussing yesterday. So I can tell you that they are working hard for that particular problem that you're talking about. They understand that problem, I can tell, and they're working to try to do everything they can to make it better for our students. But there are obstacles and there are constraints that each building and each situation has to work around. But they're aware of that and they're working on that as we speak.
Mrs. Leatherberg.
I just want to add that I had a similar conversation with Mr. Scanzuzzo last Tuesday after our board meeting, and he shared the same information with me, that I know that it really is his desire. He's very committed to our special education students and wants to do everything he can to be able to provide them with the option to come in person if we can make it work. I want to thank you for your question and for speaking about how your boys are doing, and just encourage you to keep in contact with your building principal, especially since Dr. McKenna is sharing that it is sort of going to be a building-based decision because of the different space allotments in each building right now. So having that, it all goes back to advocacy, and as we as parents, we have to be fierce advocates for our children. Make sure you're making contact with the principal at your school and sort of get at the top of that list for as soon as that there's space available that your voice can be considered. So that would be my recommendation for that. Thank you so much.
Yes, Mrs. Van Sice.
Just quickly to chime in too, with the building principal, the first step I would go before that even is their IEP manager. Make sure you're connecting with the IEP manager. So if they need additional support, they can provide it right now in this model. But I'm fully in support of that, and we will be, I believe, monitoring that. I am a special education professional. I'm a CSE chair, and my building has 1,300 students, and we are allowing our CT students to have the option to come 4 days. So I would love to see that happen here in Williamsville, because I do truly, truly believe that our students with disabilities need face-to-face supports to help them. But in the meantime, please make sure that you keep in close contact with the IEP manager. That's a very resourceful tool to use.
Okay, Mrs. Borenstein, Mr. Borenstein.
Thank you, Sean. Listening to the Terrell family story reminds me of why Williamsville Central School District is so exceptional. I just want to take the moment to thank them and the many families in our district who are working so hard to make this work for their children, and reassure you that we are trying our best to complement your work. And also we have full confidence now in leadership to make sure that the work that you do to make this work will ultimately be successful, and Williamsville will maintain its rightful place as one of the best districts in our region.
Mr. Mecca.
At the risk of being redundant, I think that as a personal statement, my point of view as a board member is that our special education children and our younger elementary children are the most vulnerable in this situation. And we have to do the best that we can by them. And I think that that remains a focus and priority, at least for me, and I think many of my board mates.
Yep, couldn't agree more. We're going to go back to another email, please, Dr. Clary.
This is from Michael Blumenson. Please explain why extracurricular activities like band and chorus have not been allowed to resume any in-person activity when certain sports have been allowed. I'm aware that our music teachers have asked for an explanation and have not been given one, other than that the district is following county guidelines to limit non-essential events. Who is making the decision as to what non-essential activities are allowed, and what is the criteria for making this decision? I submit that for many of our district parents and families, the music activities provided by the district are more essential than sports.
Good question. Who'd like to take this one? Dr. McKenna, please.
No, I'm happy to do this one too. We actually had a meeting this week on this particular topic as well. Sometimes I wish you could, know all the things behind the scenes. I'll tell you, our teachers and administrators are well aware of these problems, and they are working very hard to try to solve the issues as much as we can. But I know I think it was this Wednesday, I met with the principals, I met with Dr. Balin, and I met with Mr. Russo, who's in charge of the art and music department. And we discussed this. And the guidelines right now are very important. Based on the ECDOH guidelines, we made a decision even back before the school year started that all extracurriculars had to be virtual. And one of the things that we're still at that place, because as we phase kids in right now, what we want to do is we want to see how the phase-in process happens, and we want to make sure that it's a safe process. And so right now, with the guidelines, and ECDOH also has urged us to strongly consider what we deem necessary and essential. So right now, the extracurriculars, all extracurriculars, are going to remain virtual until we can guarantee the safety of our students. Again, it's one of those things that we're going to monitor and adjust along the way. And I know that when we bring our kids in, one of the things too that we talked about, what we want to do is make sure we look at, when they come in, attendance rates, COVID rates. So we're going to be monitoring a lot of data to make sure that our students are safe. So in the next couple of weeks, I know the music ensembles will begin again in school. So we want to see how that actually works and make sure that that's safe and that everybody is able to do that appropriately and effectively. And then we're going to have to make decisions of how we phase in the extracurriculars. So that's one of those issues as well that we're aware of. We're monitoring it. And right now, we're still going to follow based on the guidelines. We feel that we're going to still keep the extracurriculars virtual at this moment, but those are those things that are subject to change after we get our kids back in and after we monitor to see how safe everything is as well. One of the things with these cohorts that we have to really take into consideration was if you do a cohort of kids, if one student is positive, the whole cohort then is out. So you have to be very careful with how we allow these students back in and how we ensure their safety. So we're having a lot of ongoing dialogue and discussion about those issues, and but we're aware, and we'll let you know if there's ways that we can work it out, we will. But right now, we're sticking to the guidelines.
Mrs. Beer.
Yeah, sorry, I want to chime in as well because we're a very musical family, and my older two children are both in band. My sixth grader, who returned this week to the high flex model, had his first band practice in a long time. And so I just wanted to mention that point as kids are phasing in. He had his first rehearsal, and I know they were very careful. It was in the cafeteria. They were spread 12 feet apart, so they were following those guidelines. But I was so pleased to see, and the communication that came from the band teacher about what that would look like was fantastic. So I knew as a parent, he knew as a student what the expectation would be as far as where does he put his instrument, where does he go, where do they stand, like it was so specific. So I can tell there's a lot of thought being put into that. On the days that I've been working from home, I hear both of my boys. I hear a trombone at one point of the day, and I hear a tuba at another part of the day. So I know that they're still receiving lessons. Again, it's virtual. But I think this is a great question because we always strive as a district to make sure that we're equitable in what we're doing, whether it's sports or arts or music or any interest that kids have. It's important that they have the chance to have that outlet, not just in a virtual lesson in their bedroom, but in performance as well. So I appreciate the question. I will continue to ask those questions as well about when can we move to maybe performing outside or some things of this nature, but I also understand that we have to follow certain guidelines that I know right now we're not doing certain clubs or activities outside of the school day. So I was pleased to see as a parent that within the school day, he had band and they had band. They just were adapted to the environment and made it happen in the way that they could.
One of the things that has caused some confusion with this is there's different guidelines for interscholastic athletics. And that's what's I think causing some of the issues with this is there's been different guidelines in sports. Some sports have been allowed to continue while these are not part of those guidelines. I don't like you want to say something.
Yeah, I'm actually a coach in another district, so that's what I was just going to reiterate about the sports point. Unfortunately, again, it's going back to your legislators and elected officials to talk to them because as of now, is the governor who okayed sports to continue, and he had strict guidelines, and then it was up to the district to implement those guidelines for the sports to continue. And again, music and extracurriculars were tied to a different guideline. So again, we're kind of our hands are tied in those terms, but I'm glad to hear that there's still ongoing conversations within those terms.
Mr. Bernstein.
Thank you, Sean. I ran for school board on a platform of music and the arts because my professional background is as a performing arts manager. And I thought that having a strong voice for the music and the arts on the board would be helpful. What I actually found was that the entire board was a strong, fierce voice for music and the arts. And so I was really encouraged that we really do understand the value of music and the arts in a Williamsville education. And so I just want to let you know that this is an important part of an overall Williamsville education. And I believe that the entire district believes that as well.
Thank you. We'll go to another live person here. And my time as moderation is up. So Shannon Coates, we're going to come to you. And when you're done, Mrs. Wagner Kazmarek is going to take over as moderator. Kazmarek, sorry. Go ahead, Shannon.
Yes, hello. My name is Daniel Kotzen. My wife Hannah is sitting next to me. Thank you very much, and thank you for all your hard work these last few weeks. I know you have the appreciation of many, including our family, for everything you have done. I want to express briefly, outline a few concerns I have, and then I'll get to my question. One concern I have is in your presentation today, I saw no reference to the teachers union. So then I do not know if they had any input on any of the policies or decisions. I saw references to teachers, and that's good. I think the teachers need to be publicly thanked for all their hard work. But I did not see any reference to the union, so therefore we do not know if they had any input, and I think that's important. The second thing I want to say is about remote students. So our family has chosen to be fully remote for our child. And since the beginning of this process, in spite of the statements made by the president of the board, which we appreciate, which is that all families will be fully supported, our family has not felt fully supported in the remote. In particular, the language being used. For example, the first week of school, when our child was not in school, messages were sent from the principal of our school welcoming children back, but our child had no education that first week. Just now, one of the board members stated that soon there will be a return to school. That's confusing to us who are remote, who are currently in school and will be continuing in school. What does return to school mean? So that's a concern. The other concern is, and I know many of you are aware of this, that there have been online and in other arenas attacks from parents and even from students against families that have chosen to be fully remote. Now that is not in the control, obviously, of the board, but it's a concern that those attacks may continue. So here's my question. How will the board ensure that fully remote students will not experience patterns of exclusive language and exclusive practices? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coxon, for your comments and your question. I would like to say that I too had noticed some of that language personally, and I have seen some corrections made to that language, some reminders that we need to be aware just as much of our hybrid or high flex learners as our remote learners. I do know, like I said in my introduction, I have a student at South, I have a student at Mill. I've heard both of those principals talk about the importance of our remote students and have reminded families that we need to be careful about including all of our students regardless of which model they chose. So I do hope that as we move forward, people will be mindful of the comments that you made. I do think that's important. I very much believe in an inclusive school environment, inclusive of all students. So thank you so much for your comments. Would anyone else like to make a comment? Mary?
Sure. I just quickly want to thank you for making this point, because I think that we are all about continuous improvement, and it is a shift in mindset to know that we're not just talking about all students when we say all students are coming back, or all students, what is return to school, what is back to school. And so I appreciate you bringing this up today, because I want to ensure when I'm speaking as a board member at this table or even in the community that we are being inclusive of both hybrid and remote students, and that our district and their messaging, our building, I don't think it's ever intentional for anyone to, prioritize one group over the other, but we really need to pay attention to that. So your comments are really helpful, and I think will help us to reflect on how things are messaged at the district and just to put a lens on that. And I also just want to take a moment to thank you. I recognize your name from other board correspondence when you've written us email. So I appreciate you taking the time today in person, and also, in not just you, there's been many parents who've reached out to us, but I do want to thank you for both your comments today and the emails you sent to our board.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mark?
Sure. Mr. Kotzen, thanks for your support of us and your kind words. I want to speak to just a few things that you mentioned. As you pointed out, our remote students were not receiving an education in that first week of school. And that is the reason that we pulled back on the hybrid model for middle and high school, so that we could fix the situation, provide a high quality education to both remote and in-person learners. So I can understand your frustration about that, but please understand we recognize that as a huge problem that needed to be solved immediately. And we took action on that to make it happen. I would like to ask our superintendent about that, a follow-up question about that, our acting superintendent, just in terms of the days that were missed, how that's going to be made up, or any thoughts about that. But before we move to him, I do want to say that once the acting superintendent took charge of the planning for our pandemic response to education, the union, both the administrators union and the teachers union, had a larger role in terms of being brought into the planning process than they did prior to that point. And maybe our acting superintendent will speak to that as well.
Sure. Well, first, I just want to say thank you very much, Mr. Kotzen, for bringing up that very important point. And it's important that we're cognizant of that, about our remote students. And what I'm going to do is make sure that I speak to the principals as well, and make sure that everyone is cognizant about that point, because it's very important. Thank you for bringing that to us. Regarding union representation, I know that on the relaunch plan, we did have union representation. And I know we had specific union representation on the, when we crafted what school days would look like. I forget the specific name for that particular committee right now. But we have on some of the committees, yes, we have specifically asked for some union representation. Some of the others, no. We do have union representation. I know on the creative engagement committee we do. I know there's teachers on this social emotional committee, but it's not that we reached out to them specifically as union representation. So there's teachers and union, there's people who are in the union on all of the committees, but they're not always working as union with the union hat on. So we want to make sure that with all of our committees, that we have stakeholder representation. I think that's what's important too. But I know with the relaunch committee, we did have union representation on that. And I know with the committee where we put the school day together, we asked them to be a part of that. And we include, I try to include representatives from as many of the stakeholder groups as I possibly can. That's why I make sure I invite administrators to be a part of it. I invite teachers to be a part of it. When appropriate, we have parents and students on our committees as well, like in our creative engagement committees and our social emotional learning committees. We make sure that we have parents and students on those committees. So I try to look at each committee and you try to see what's the most appropriate makeup for each committee. And when appropriate, we'll have union representation there. But on most committees, we'll have, there will be teachers on just about every committee and administrators as well.
Teresa?
I just want to say thank you very much for your question, and also personally for the correspondence that you both you and your wife have had with me through email. You are absolutely correct that words matter. And I can tell you that I've been very reflective about some of the communication that has come, whether from myself personally or things that have come through the district. When we know better, we do better. So I am very grateful and reflective about you bringing this to our attention. We need to be inclusive of all students, and it starts by being mindful with our words and our statements that we put out. I was sincere in the comments that I said this morning about making sure that going forward, I am mindful to be responsive and inclusive of all children, whether the family chooses remote for the remainder of the year, or whether the parent wants their child back in school yesterday. Regardless, all of our students deserve fair treatment and access to the highest quality public education that we are able to provide them, regardless of the format that's being chosen for them. One of the things I really like about this high flex model is that it's really trying so hard to accommodate that. My kids do their classes in their bedrooms, and I am sometimes called the little stalker mom because I will stand outside the door and listen because they do not want me coming in. But I've gotten to know each teacher's voice, and so when I hear the teacher speaking, I immediately know what mod it is and what course it is. And I can hear the teacher checking in with the students in front of her, as well as the students that are on the computer. So I do believe that that's happening. As an educator, I know that that's going to take time, and that I'm giving a lot of grace to our teachers and a lot of respect to our teachers for their willingness to take on this challenge and to roll with it, because I taught for 20 years, and for the 20 years that I taught, teaching meant kids going to school. So some of those slips of the tongue are just because of the historical context of what going to school used to look like. I understand now that because of the pandemic, that may not ever fully change. We do not know what the future brings. I don't believe in the concept of normal any longer. Each day brings its own adventure. So thank you so much for that feedback. I take it to heart. I'm a very reflective person, and I tell you that words matter. We as parents are the model for that for our children. Our children's actions, all of that comes from the home. The parents are your children's first teachers. And so when we as when we as adults take responsibility for the words that we use, whether it's the spoken word or the written word, and sometimes the written word on social media is not really what we would be willing to say to someone if we were looking them in the eye. I can say that feelings are fluid, but it's what we do with those feelings that matter. Our children are watching, they are learning from us, and that is what guides me as a parent and as a human and as an educator. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I think we'll move on to our next written question.
What I've done because of time, I've kind of lumped together 3 emails that talk about the same topic, from Tim and Julie Shara, Rochelle Lawless, and Shannon Hoffman. So I'm going to take this from Shannon Hoffman's email, and all of them talk about Wednesdays, which again, we've kind of covered a little bit already today. But she's kind of asking, and I'm paraphrasing part of this, about if this could happen in terms of Wednesdays. So she says, when the schedule is impacted by days off, can you use Wednesdays as compensation? Working examples, this week the students could have attended Tuesday the 13th and Wednesday the 14th, as Monday the 12th was a holiday. Thursday and Friday students attend school on Wednesday, November 25th, as November 26th and 27th are holidays. So when a Wednesday is used as compensation for a given cohort, the other cohort receives synchronous and/or asynchronous learning for that given day. So a question about the Wednesday schedule, which I guess would go to Dr. McKenna.
Sure. Well, right now in our plan, we don't have any opportunity for compensation. But again, we're going to be reviewing as we move forward. I appreciate the suggestion and I will bring it back to the committee for discussion.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our next live question. The next person on my list is Jennifer Drake. Jennifer? It looks like you're muted. Okay, it looks like Jennifer no longer is going to be speaking. It looks like the next person on the list is, and I can hardly see this, and the name is not familiar to me, so Sarah Gajamran. Please correct me. Are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, could you please state your name since I know I butchered it?
You did, but that's fine. You can just call me Sai. Just a quick question on following up on the theme from the previous discussion. I have heard students talk about some of their experiences with the teachers, especially students that are remote. Not any particular teacher in as such, but generally speaking, they have good experiences and they have bad experiences, and I'm trying to understand what sort of quality assurance or monitoring is in place to make sure that a teacher's behavior is appropriate in terms of the comments that they make, or in terms of respecting the diversity, or in terms of just being effective. How do we monitor performance of teachers, especially in context of the remote environment?
Thank you so much for your question. Teresa, would you like to respond first, please?
Thank you for that question. I think, first of all, it's important for you to know that the board does not monitor teacher behavior because we monitor the superintendent. And our contract is only with the superintendent. The teacher's contract is with the superintendent and not with the board. So I know there's confusion there. We, as the board, always approve funding for all of our employee contracts. However, we do not oversee them in that regard. What I think is so important is when there is an issue with the teacher, that the parent contacts the teacher directly first and has that one-on-one conversation. And I've had to do that this year. I've had to email a teacher. And what I recommend is that, because when you're upset about something, putting it all in words isn't the best way to go about it. And that's my personal perspective as both a parent and an educator. What I recommend doing is sending a quick voicemail and saying, would you please call me? I'd like to talk to you about a concern I have. And so if you as the parent send that voicemail to the teacher, and then give the teacher the respect and the opportunity to call you back and to have that conversation. And I fully support and promote a phone conversation because you can hear each other's tone. You can really work on the relationship and come to some understanding about what the concern is. Because 9 times out of 10, the teacher wants to do right by that child. And understand that you as the parent are the client. And for all of us, it's our goal to serve our client. If you're not satisfied, then the next route is to go to the principal. And I know when I've had these conversations with teachers, I've often said, thank you, I feel satisfied. I don't feel I need to bring it to the principal, and just letting you know this will remain between you and myself. On other circumstances, I have brought things to the principal understanding so that the principal can deal with that, because it is the principal that oversees the teacher and is responsible for evaluating the teacher through the APPR format. So that is my understanding as an educator and someone else who studied school administration. I will certainly let Dr. McKenna speak to that further. It's a great question. Thank you.
I concur completely with you, Mrs. Leatherville. Some people call it the chain of command, but I like to call it a process of communication. and it should follow the proper channels. And I agree that the overwhelming majority of time, things are solved at the source. And go to the source, and usually that is the classroom teacher. And I concur too, after working with teachers for so many years, the overwhelming majority of teachers, they want to solve the issues too. And they care about kids, and a lot of times it's just making them aware of the situation. So I completely concur to start with the teacher as first, and then if that for some reason isn't working, then you go to the principal of that school. But I've also had great, I say, just luck with the idea of working with the chain of command and the communication process. And people do want to solve problems, and they appreciate it too when you reach out to them directly. You know, when you go above somebody's head without going to the source first, I think that people appreciate that opportunity to solve the problem at its lowest level. So I would say I concur with Mr. Leatherbarrow, and that would be my advice.
Thank you. I think in the interest of time, we're going to move on to a written question, and then Mark Mecca will be taking over for the remainder of the session as our facilitator.
Thank you. What I have done in the interest of time, have taken the liberty to, I'm going to ask 4 separate questions, but I editorially believe they can each be answered in like 10 words or less. So I'd like to make sure that we get in as many questions and comments as possible. So I'll state one, and then someone can answer it. In most cases, it's Dr. McKenna, you know, in a nice short answer, then I'll do the second, third, and fourth. So this is from Lisa Lostumbo. And she says, while there's a lot going on right now in the immediate future, I have a question regarding the future once the pandemic has ended. Would it be possible for Transit Middle to add a much needed second vice principal? It is the largest middle school in the district and roughly the same size as East High School, which has 3 vice principals.
Well, what we have to do, each year we go through a staffing process, and what we have to do is we look at all the data regarding schools. For example, to look at a school, you'd have to look at the need for discipline and what are the other needs in that school. So each one of those positions we look at individually and uniquely to each building and see if, you know, where the need is. I know that last year, for example, we had a process that was ongoing. We did 2 elementary assistant principals and the assistant principal at North High School last year, because that's where the needs were. This year, as we go through the staffing process, we'll evaluate the needs, and we'll see if there is a need there that justifies that position. But every year we go through a thorough examination and staffing process to look at needs, and that's what we'll do. We'll examine the needs.
Thank you. A second brief question from Kelly Weissenberg. Will high flex students be able to sign on remotely on days when they're home sick?
My understanding is that they will be able to, but I'll check on that. I'm 98% sure that they are, but you know, that's one of those things that I want to make 100% sure. I'll confirm that with you, but I'm pretty sure that they can.
Thank you. Question from Sonia Frankhauser. She says, I believe Cuomo's threshold for closing in-person school education is if the city or state goes above 5% confirmed coronavirus tests. If this is accurate, what is your measurement or parameters for determining if you will have to close the schools for in-person instruction?
Well, that's a good question. And what we'll have to do with each of that, it will be determined on an individual basis, but it really isn't 5%. The governor's actually said 9% is what he actually said. So, which I think is way too high. We would make a decision way before we got to 9%. But what we would do is work with the Erie County Department of Health, and we would look at the situation. We would make recommendations in concert with Erie County Department of Health, and we would do what's in the best interest of our students and staff. I'd say similar to what we just saw in Niagara Falls. They had to look at the individual school, the individual situation, look at all the parameters of the whole, you know, the impacts throughout the whole school community, and you make a decision in concert with the Department of Health, and that's what we would do.
Thank you. The last quick question, Stephanie Hooley. We were told that whatever option we chose for our children this fall, remote or hybrid, they would need to stick with that until a date in January. Is this still correct? And does that mean in January, we definitely can change to the other option?
Well, what we did is, remember, just in early October, we gave everybody, or we put a survey out to see if there's people who wanted to change. Some people were able to change, but you got to remember that that's space dependent. So again, what we'll do at the semester break, which is at the end of January, we'll send out the same request to the parents and say, is there anyone who's interested perhaps in changing models? Now, again, there's no guarantee just because you put in and say that you'd like to change, that you will get to change, because it is dependent on the space that is available in the buildings at that time. But there will be another opportunity to request.
Mr. Michael, before you begin, I just want to say, I know that we went over time at the beginning. So, and I believe I see a few hands up, but I think at least 3 of those hands have been up there the whole time. I'm willing to stay. I know if someone needs to leave, but I see other board members shaking their head and giving thumbs up, that we're willing to stay and answer your questions.
You preempted me.
That's rare.
I was getting ready to say that. Yeah, I mean, we should cover, we've got four people up there that we haven't heard from that have their hands up. So let's go into overtime.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for those of you that have had your little blue emoji hands up there for your patience. We appreciate it.
Just so I can do the calculations for my paycheck. We're at double time on the weekends, I think, right? And I get $0 an hour, so that's $0 extra. Okay, all right. All right, just so, okay, sign my time sheets, please. All right, Lauren Bloomberg is our next person up.
Good morning. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Morning.
Okay, thank you so much for taking my question. And I just want to thank everybody for all your hard work and dedication. It is not going unnoticed, especially our teachers and the board. I'm an educator myself, so I understand what everyone's going through. My question, and it was sort of addressed a little bit, is about screen time. I just feel like I would just love the teachers to be cognizant of the homework that they're giving, because while our kids are on the screen all day long, they are also spending endless hours on the screen at night. And my children, I have a child in middle school and a child in high school, and they are feeling burnt out and frustrated by the amount of screen time. So that is just my question and my concern, and I was just wondering if anyone can address that.
Ms. Bloomberg, thank you for your question. I see a hand up across the table. Miss Mary.
Hi, Mrs. Bloomberg. Thank you for your question. I just want you to know that you're not alone in that question. I attended a Hine Middle PTSA meeting this week, and that was also brought up by a couple of parents. What the teacher representative said, which I thought was so insightful, is that she said, you know, a lot of us who are 20-year veterans are first-year teachers this year. And she said, I can tell you that I'm sure there's not a teacher in this building who wants the children to spend another 6 hours on the screen after a day, you know, of working virtually. And a lot of this right now is trying to get this right, you know, trying to find the sweet spot of having some kind of follow-up or thinking, but not overloading kids with screen time. I share that same frustration that you do as well, of worrying about my children in their room staring at devices for too long. I also understand that teachers are trying to get through content, and they may not have the same accessibility to kids as they once had, going 5 days a week full time. So they're probably looking at ways to extend learning and how much time do they have available. What the teacher at the PTSA meeting recommended was just what Teresa had suggested before about reaching out to teachers. I don't think they're trying to overwhelm kids, and especially in middle school, you know, and there's kids who are in taking 7 different courses, a little bit of homework really adds up into your evening. So some of this, I think, is trying to find that sweet spot of what's too much, what's not enough, and communication, having a little patience and grace back and forth with each other to find that comfortable level. But again, start with the teacher. If you're really uncomfortable with the workload, after communicating that to the teacher, it's important principals know that too, so they can work with their staff to find a comfortable level of allowing kids to do some work after, but does homework have to necessarily be looking at a screen? I think it's a great question that's worth continuing that discussion at the district level. Thank you.
Okay, right next to Ms. Mary, Mr. Michael.
It's funny you said that. I was at the PTSA meeting in Transit this past week, Wednesday or Thursday. My days are blurring together with my newborn baby. But the same question was brought up. It is a big concern. I think it's also a stress level on parents. Being at home with their child and making sure they get the adequate work, and then with their jobs. And there was discussion as well by Dr. Wall at Transit explaining they have to find this happy medium, and we're all in these, new territory that we're trying to tread through. I, as an educator and teacher, I'm doing the same thing. I've taught for 14 years, and I'm in the classroom questioning myself, should I be giving this homework today or should I not be? But I agree, is reaching out to the teacher. Parents have reached out to me as a teacher, and we found ways around that for certain students. There's certain situations that their families were in that we were able to work through it. So I would suggest reaching out to the teacher. I know many of the teachers in this district, and they're very willing to work with the families, even in an individual basis. But that's also important to attend those PTSA meetings and talk with your principals as well and express those concerns. It's a good way to divulge the information and work through it so that it works for each family, each individual student. And I just would encourage, Dr. McKenna to talk to the administrators and teachers to really work this year through finding a happy medium with homework, because I'm also a big proponent of social emotional learning. Kids have to be kids right now. This pandemic has really hurt that, especially for our young elementary students in middle school, where kids got to be a kid sometimes. They got to go out and throw some snowballs at each other. They got to, they got to live life, as Ms. Leatherbauer said earlier. And so, that would be a suggestion. I, as a single board member, would suggest reaching out and kind of finding a happy medium between a great education, which I know they're going to get, and that social emotional.
Okay, Mrs. Van Sice.
Just really quickly on that, I think the key word is balance. So Ms. Bloomberg, I totally, understand what you're saying, because I've noticed that with my own child. I mean, I won't be able to find him at night, and I'm like, where are you? And he's at his desk in his one room, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and I'm like, you cannot be doing work. And he's like, yes, I have to finish this assignment, or yes, there's something. I did reach out to one of the teachers, and what she did was she at least provided an actual document, a PDF that you could print out. So the student could go to actually the pen paper, which just made it so that he's not on the screen, especially if it's geometry. So that was a little bit, I believe that's different than we're doing some pen paper activities to make that at least a choice. So I think just the key word is, and I think with the professional development teachers are receiving, and their comfort level as that increases, finding that balance, because they are on the screen and they will be, no matter what model that they're in. So finding, even though we need those supplemental independent learning assignments, being creative of how we can still achieve that without having it be always on the screen. So I do appreciate that comment.
Mr. Sean LeMay.
I'll very quickly summarize this up. I like what Mary said. 20-year veteran teachers, they're acting as first-year teachers. And I think that's what this whole high flex and the Wednesdays are going to be for professional development, is for them to learn how to take this balance of, how do I teach in class? How do I teach online? How do I teach to keep people interested and interactive? And then how do I supplement that homework to encompass what we're teaching and further drive the point home? So it's going to be that balancing act right now as teachers try to figure all this out. it may be a little heavy now. We might find that it becomes too light on the other side. So while they make those adjustments, you know, I think it's a positive, and everybody's learning on the fly. This is an unproven method. We've never taught remote students. We've never taught, you know, half-filled classes. We've never, you know, it's just never happened. So I think it'll get better. It has to get better. So I appreciate all of the work and their patience, and especially the devotion of our teachers trying to figure out how to make this new plan work and how to balance all of these things. So thank you.
Okay. Did we get through all the email questions, or do you have?
There are 4 more.
Would you address one or two of them?
All right. This is from Jean Conklin. Summarizing what she stated, that last spring and this school year, some teachers' Zoom classes are being interrupted. People are posting things, distracting the students, and so forth. Is there any way to shore up the remote connection so everybody in attendance is accounted for by name and supposed to be there? I don't know.
I'll do the best I can do. We're doing everything we can to make sure the Zoom sessions are as safe as possible. They're really supposed to just be let in by the teacher. Everyone should have their own link, so it shouldn't be that other people should be able to go in. And if anything happens inappropriately, please make sure that you let your teacher know right away, or the principal right away, because we need to address it, just like we would with the code of conduct. So if anything happens through a Zoom class that for one reason or another somebody feels is not right or not appropriate, please let the the teacher know right away, or let the principal know right away, and they'll be disciplined. There'll be consequences. The code of conduct applies to those who are online. So appropriate discipline will be handled if just make sure it's brought to people's attention. But I know we're doing everything we can to make sure that only the proper people get into these meetings. And if something happens, I know that the principals will address it immediately. But first, let the teacher know they'll address it. And if something needs to be more serious discipline, the principals will address it. And I know that they have so far too.
All right, should we take another email question, or?
It's up to you.
Yeah, okay, all right, we'll go to Miss Ayana Acosta, but before you ask your question, Miss Ayana Acosta, I have a question for you. I went to elementary school with a Michael Acosta. Is he a relative of yours?
I think you're
You on mute?
Are you there?
All right, we're there.
Okay, no, I did not.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So first, I want to just thank you all for taking additional questions, because I got a little worried there that I wouldn't be able to get mine in, but I'm thankful that you guys are allowing the community to kind of ask our questions and get our questions answered. My one question is, what instruction is going to look like for those kids who choose the hybrid model in the class? My daughter is a 10th grader at South, and she's concerned from videos and questions and conversations she's had with others, is that she's going to be sitting in class with a computer in front of her face as if she was at home as a remote student. What is going to be different for the hybrid kids? Is it, if it's going to be the same as remote, I have concerns there.
Thanks for your question. Anybody up to addressing that?
Well, I'll try to chime in on that. I think that each class is going to be completely different. And I'm not sure I understood the question. So how is a hybrid student going to be different than a remote student? And I think that in the HyFlex model, the classroom is going to be, there's going to be synchronous and asynchronous instruction going on. So a hybrid student, let's say that's in class on that day, they're going to be getting direct instruction, with the teacher, and then there's going to be other students that are going to be on the screen. And some of those students who are on the screen, they might be coming in the other couple of days. So really, you got to look at it as, with the HyFlex model, it's a class. And it's almost, and there's going to be groups that are going to be happening. There's going to be some groups that are in school, going to be some groups that are outside of school. Sometimes they'll be doing it jointly together. I went in last week to the middle school just to see some of the 5th and 6th grade and how it was going to work. And it was definitely every class, some classes were doing whole group instruction with kids on a monitor and kids on the seats. And then I went into others where they were working with just kids on the monitor, and the kids in the class at that point in time were working on some independent work at that point in time. So each class is going to be uniquely sculpted, by the teacher based on the needs of the students. So that's what the HyFlex model is. It allows the teacher to develop classes that have synchronous and asynchronous, and that's where the small group, whole group, and independent learning is going to come in. So it almost is, to me, it's just like almost a regular class, only there's a group that's going to be zooming in with technology. But the teacher is still doing all the same types of instruction, that they would as much as possible if the whole class was in attendance. So, and that's why some of the PD is so important, especially the lesson design component that was required for all the teachers to go to. And even the other required class, which was the community building, which is how to work with the various groups at the same time and how to put them into groups. So I would say that it should be just like the other students. They should be getting the same instruction. They should be getting the same quality of instruction. It's the same curriculum that the other kids are getting. And the teacher then decides on how to develop each class each day based on the specific needs of that class. So it shouldn't be that a remote student gets something very, very different than a student that's in class. That's one of the purposes of HyFlex is the students are together and they should be receiving basically the same instruction.
Okay, Ms. Van Sice.
So I do think I know also exactly what you're talking about. And I do think there's going to be a difference with what Williamsville is doing compared to some other districts because of the items that were purchased, the microphones, the cameras, all of that different technology. I understand what you're saying because some other schools might be where the student is attending in person with the computer, their Chromebook in front of them, as well as the students at home on the computer. So how does that look differently? Why are you sending your child to school if they're going to be on a computer ultimately, but they're just in the school? My understanding is that Williamsville is doing all this professional development to be trained to not have that be the situation. That when the student attends in person, they're having live instruction with the teacher moving around and instructing them just like a regular school day. And then those students at home on the screen also see that opportunity, but of course they're at home on a screen. So it does look different than the remote student compared to those that are in HyFlex, if that makes sense.
Very good. Miss
Just call me Crystal.
Crystal.
Get the last name. So I too, I heard this question asked at a PTS meeting at South and at the PTSA meeting at Mill. So I know that this is a concern of many parents. And I do think what Mrs. Van Sice just said is accurate, that we are working so that teachers will not have to have the kids sitting in front of a screen when they're live in person. However, I'd also just like to reiterate what was said earlier. If your student is going to school and you're finding that's what's happening and that's not working for your student, make sure you're reaching out to those teachers. Make sure then if you need to reach out to the principal and let them know what is and what is not working in the HyFlex model. Thank you.
Mr. LeMay.
This is a pretty big question. It's certainly a question that I've been asking for quite a bit for explanation. What we don't want is what the original model in August was, which was talking about putting a camera in a classroom that was literally the window into the classroom, and that was it. So basically the virtual idea was we were going to have a kid literally standing outside the classroom watching the classroom but not participating. That was dead end, not at all what we wanted to do with it. We wanted to be able to take the model of still engaging the student and making sure that that student, whether in person or remote, whether that student is in the HyFlex, meaning that they're going to come in 2 days a week, or they're going to be 4 days or 5 days only remote, they're still being engaged so that the activities are going to focus around being able to interact and be able to participate as if you were actually sitting in the class. Now, what that physically looks like is difficult to describe yet because we haven't, we're just in the process of rolling it out. But it does require a lot of professional development, and that's where those Wednesdays are coming into play. I know I've asked the acting assistant, or excuse me, the acting superintendent to put together for us in the future a presentation that's actually going to dive into a day in the life of what this model looks like. And I'm not asking for, you know, something that's going to be in writing or that's going to be verbally. I'm physically looking. Let's see pictures. Let's see interactive videos. Let's actually see what does the child or the student see when they're sitting in the classroom versus what they're seeing when they're working remotely from home on their laptop or their Chromebook. So it's coming, it's working, but from everything that I've understood, all the PD that's going into it, all the background research that I've seen in this, that I've been doing my own research on to understand this better, it's going to be that truly interactive idea. And if kids are breaking off into little discussion groups, the online kids are going to have that opportunity to do that as well in between themselves and stuff like that. So,
Mr. Biscaglia.
I'm just kidding. You can say
Mr. Michael.
I'm just kidding. I just want to reiterate that Dr. McKenna said it throughout this community forum that they are going to continue to be looking at this reopening model. This isn't done now or when the high school gets in October 26th. They're going to looking at the pros and cons throughout and fixing the problems that may arise. I've heard Dr. McKenna kind of say that a couple times today, and he has reiterated that to the board through emails and communication throughout this process. So it's a good thing. They're going to keep evaluating it. So again, it goes back to what we've been saying. If you do see a problem, tell your teacher so that they can tell the principal, so we can get to where it needs to be, where we can, the district can look at those issues and resolve them. As Dr. McKenna said, he's not going to stop looking at it. So.
Thank
Okay,
you. I see, sorry to interrupt you, Mark. I see there's a hand up. I just want to point out that thank you to that individual that still has the hand up. And we did get to hear you speak earlier. So I'm going to let Mark take care of a few more email questions and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, please.
All right, there are 3 more emails, and I'm just going on the first one. I apologize, but I will say I'm going to editorialize that this is a question that is probably not answerable right now, but I will certainly, because we received it, so I will ask it. This is from G. Bucello. Please explain the transition model for a back to school 5-day timeline through the year 2023. So I believe that's not answerable at this moment, and I'd like to move on.
Well, can I just add one thing about that? I think it's so hard for us because we're so used to things being a certain way. And I know that, as a human, I have certain expectations for how I expect certain things to look. And that is true for what I expect school to look like as well, and the public education system, because it has historically looked the same for well over 100 years, right? But I mean, as this forum was going on, I just got a message, and I don't know that if this is true or not, but this text message that came through just says that Clarence just announced that they are going full virtual after Thanksgiving. So I don't know whether or not that is true, but I think that text alone is a reminder to me that we are doing the right thing with all of the active planning, but that the only thing that really existed today in this moment, and we have to go day by day with this, we do not know what the future is going to look like in terms of the pandemic and in terms of the requirements or restrictions that are in place to protect all of us, but that have implications on whether or not our children can return to school, and I should say whether our high flex students can return to school, or what it's going to look like in the future. So it's great to have long-term planning. I know long-term strategic planning is an important part of educational leadership, and it is a crux for the success of a school district. This is a very unique situation, and I think that that's important to speak on. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Mr. McKenna, or I'll let her call on Mary because I know she has a hand up too.
No, we're taking it day by day, and I think what our focus is we want to do what's right by our students, and we're evaluating every single day, and that's what we're going to do. every step of the way. And we're going to work with the Erie County Department of Health. We're going to work with our teachers. We're going to work with our community. And everything that we put in place is going to be because we believe it's in the best interest of our students. And that's what's going to guide our decision making.
Mary.
Just to piggyback on that, I understand the want and need to hear a step-by-step plan. But as Teresa and Dr. McKenna expressed, some of what will guide that is not in our control. So while I want the same thing, I would love to know what day, what time, how, when, how many kids, like those are details that me as a planner and knowing how it impacts my kids would love to have so I could share and prepare and plan for that. And that is just the nature of this pandemic that we learn as we go through, is that we don't know which way the road's going to turn next. That's not in our control, and I wish that it was. As a school district, you have to follow the guidelines that come from the Department of Health around safety, and we don't know when that will change and how. So I appreciate all the district's planning around what can we do with this, but the if and the when, those things are really out of our control. The best we can do is prepare and be ready. What we're ready for, every day brings new surprises, but I appreciate the question. I know that question is on so many parents' minds, including myself. It's just, as Dr. McCleary said, it's really impossible to answer at this point because we don't know the directives that will come from the state, when and what, and we'll do our best to just communicate. And as a board, we continue to ask questions when new information comes in, making sure that the district is taking into account anything new, any changes that come. But we have to follow guidelines that come from the state, that come from the Department of Health.
And we're in contact with the Department of Health on a daily basis. We really are.
Ms. Suzanne.
And just to say, hopefully that is not factual. Well, I will tell you, 3 teachers from Clarence just said they've heard nothing of that plan at all. So that's where it's always for. So it's really important. I just want to make that clear so that no one goes and says at the community forum from Williamsville today, this is what was announced.
Right.
That is not factual. So please know that. And that's why it's always important.
Mr. Piscatty.
So quick, in terms of that question, it is a good email. We all want our kid. I want my 2nd grader back in school 5 days. I, as a teacher, would love my students to be in school 5 days so we can do more group activity. And but unfortunately, it's like reiterating what everyone else said. It's just we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen in 3 hours from now with this pandemic. I have a very, very close friend who lives in Florida who their kids go 5 days, and he just got. I was just talking to him last night because he's so upset that now there's cases arising in Florida where they're on the move where it might be going back to full remote. And I think that's important that we stop and re-look at what we are doing here in Williamsville, because I think we've come up and developed a plan that can transition back and forth smoothly, and the teachers, which is very important, feel comfortable enough to do that, where there won't be that lag in education for our students, which is extremely important. I just kind of wanted to add that.
Okay, any other emails?
2 more. This next one is kind of piggybacks on what's just been said from Amanda McMahon. Now that we are more than 5 weeks into the school year, has there been any consideration to increasing the number of days our youngest learners are in school? Is there any way to get even just kindergarten back to school 4 to 5 days a week, since they are in smaller class sizes?
Well, that's space dependent right now. And we would say, again, we would love the opportunity to get more kids in school. But right now with the guidelines, the social distancing guide, we can only get so many kids into classrooms each day. So we're monitoring, every day. And if the guidelines change, we would get more kids in. So like we've talked about that many times here in the forum. We'd love to have more kids in, but we have to go by what the guidelines are at this time.
If I could just say, I think parent preferences for changes were due October 1st, is that right?
Yeah.
So our first priority would probably be trying to accommodate those parents that requested a change from full remote to hybrid in that situation, right? If we had space, would that be accurate?
You know, that's, I would assume that's accurate, but I think that we just have, I think we have to wait till we get to the semester. And because one of the things I think is important too, I know we had conversations with principals about, is it's not just so much a first come, first served, so we gotta look at needs of students. Because there are some students that, you know, it might be for their social emotional well-being or many other factors that go into it. So it's just the selection process. It isn't like, oh, I beat you, so I get the spot. It definitely is reviewed and discussed.
Okay, good point. Mr. Michael.
Just real quick on that thought, you know, again, I have a second grader, I love them in 4 or 5 days a week, but I would like to just give a shout out, and this is just personal, like my son's teacher at Maple West has been exceptional, awesome, fantastic. I couldn't have more positive words to say. And I think that goes for a lot of the teachers there. I've talked to many of his class, his friends that have different teachers in second grade who have said they've done an excellent job. And I think we look at it as, oh my gosh, they're not in there 5 days personally, but I feel like my son is still getting at least 3 to 4 days of really strong education and teaching. At least that's my experience with my son's teacher. He has been exceptional, and I feel like that's across the board because we all know our Williamsville teachers. So it may not feel like they're there 5 days, but the work they're getting, I know many people in different districts, it's above and beyond so far. So.
Okay, any other emails?
I believe that this is the last one. I apologize if I missed someone, although again, we have the requirement of 1 question per person. So the final email is from Diana Montgomery, and she states, why would the Board of Education approve the salary for an interim superintendent with no superintendent experience?
I can start off with that one.
Okay, Teresa.
So I just want to say that we were in a difficult position at the beginning of September when we did what we needed to do to give our students the best possible outcomes going forward. I believe that Dr. McKenna is a New York State certified, highly qualified school district administrator. He has over 25 years of administrative experience in a variety of capacities, including the last 3 years as assistant superintendent in our district, which is the 2nd largest school district in terms of student enrollment and staff in Western New York. I believe that based upon his work experience, his leadership style, and his temperament, Dr. McKenna is the right person to lead our district and return our focus to educating all of our students. In regards to why I voted to give him the additional compensation within the MOA, the role of superintendent, especially during a time of crisis, and we are in a global pandemic health crisis. In times of crisis, leadership matters more than anything. And I just want to say to you personally, Dr. McKenna, it's been a privilege to work with you. And I've been extremely happy from the first moment that he's taken on this role. That was back the beginning of September, and we waited until October 13th to approve any level of compensation. And part of that was because we wanted to wait and see what was going to happen during that first month. He was not brought in during a regular situation by any means. He was brought in when close to 1,400 students were not being included, as one of our speakers pointed out to us, or even considered with any form of learning plan. We had students who were welcomed back to school while others were in the wings waiting for their opportunity to begin their school year. So that's a really difficult time for any individual. I don't care if they had been superintendent in another school district for 10 years prior. For anyone to come in and be willing to accept that responsibility, I feel deserved a higher level of compensation. I also want to say that, one of my beliefs is that education is a helping profession. And in my personal conversations with Dr. McKenna, he shared that he just wants to help this community. We realize, we see, we're not blind. We see the anger that's out there and the frustration, but I believe as a human being that there's two real emotions, fear and love. And so when I see the anger, I know that the real emotion behind that is fear. Because we all love our children so much. And there's fear when a situation is chaotic. There's fear when a plan changes on the daily. There's fear when the calendar said school started, but my kids didn't get to start. That creates an extreme amount of fear, especially in this district, which has a long-standing reputation of upholding education as one of the highest services that we can provide for our students. Education is a human right identified by the United Nations for all children. And so I feel good about the decision that was made. I also want the public to know that it was negotiated. We sought out an attorney outside of Western New York. We sought out an attorney that comes recommended as writing the most superintendent contracts in the state of New York. And we wanted to make sure that we were fiscally responsible and that what we were approving for compensation was appropriate and comparable for the level of responsibility that would be undertaken by Dr. McKenna.
I'd like to respond as well, and then I'll go around. I see other people that would like to respond. From my perspective as a board member, we had a situation that was untenable, where we had plans that were changing too frequently, and there wasn't solid planning, we felt. And we started the school year with a situation where with the plan that we had, where students were not going to be able to be educated, the remote students. We've worked with Dr. McKenna for 3 years in his assistant capacity of HR. And I personally, as a board member, and I believe that the other board members I work with feel the same way, that he has the energy, intelligence, enthusiasm, and relationships to turn this situation around quickly. And we absolutely needed to do that. I can't really speak to the negotiation process, but as to how we got to the number we got to, but we firmly believed that we needed Dr. McKenna to help us fix this situation. And we've largely done that at this point. So I feel very good about the decision that we made as well, despite the criticism that we're receiving at this point. Ms. Van Sice.
I would just like to also recognize that there is a lot of inaccurate information in our community. There are accusations being made, and there are a lot of assumptions. And, we know that that's being circulated. Unfortunately, we are not able to speak of that. But I would like to tell you that we, or at least I can speak kind of for all of us, we do have some of the facts and the details. And I personally, as I believe we showed at the table, have confidence in Dr. McKenna as our acting superintendent right now. So again, unfortunately, we can't share everything at this time, but please know that a lot of information that's being put out there might not be accurate and is not accurate.
Okay, Michael.
I just want to reiterate what Teresa said, that it's not like we jumped out on a limb. We hired an outside attorney that has over 15 years of experience in this, that we didn't just jump on the first bite, and he helped us through the process, which was very difficult. So I just want to reiterate that. This attorney has done contracts from Long Island, New York, all the way to Niagara Falls. and in between. And then I also want to reiterate, the board didn't just jump in to pick somebody. We did our due diligence and asking administrators throughout the entire district who they felt comfortable meeting. And it was a unanimous decision. So it was not just blindly pick a name out of the hat. We did due diligence. We asked the entire administrative staff, and it was unanimous who they wanted to lead through this difficult time, extremely difficult time. And again, it's an acting superintendent, yes, and it looks like, okay, why is someone who's interim getting this much? But it's on par for what a normal acting superintendent would get almost throughout the state for what size student population, teacher, faculty population, and things like that. There's a lot of things that the public doesn't see. And it's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate we can't show you those things. But there's a lot of underlying factors that, this is my first year on the board, I would probably be on the other side saying the same thing. Why? You know, where are my tax dollars going? But now being on the board, you see the underlying things that the public can't, and it's hard. I get that. It's hard to sit back and not know everything. But it's eye-opening for myself being 1 year on the board and seeing such underlying things that go into every decision made.
Just to quickly jump off of that, exactly what Mike was saying. We try very hard to ensure that we're being responsible with decisions. And I felt very good about having legal counsel through this process. One of the pieces of correspondence that I saw was someone questioning, how can we choose a number that's $15,000 higher in salary than a Clarence superintendent? And I want to really point this out to the point of size, that a district of our size is something very different. Clarence has one high school. I believe they have one middle school. We have 3 high schools. We have 4 middle schools, and we're in crisis mode. And we see our acting superintendent right now working around the clock, taking parent suggestions like, please give us a daily update, and putting that into a video so that parents can see a visual of what's happening here every day. So I also feel very comfortable about our decision that we've reached. I'm happy to see the amount of work that is coming from our acting superintendent to get us through crisis mode, and to help ensure that all of our kids are getting an equitable education that they all deserve.
Mr. LeMay?
It's important to understand that, you know, Dr. McKenna has been working diligently night and day. When we asked him to step into this role, it was a holiday weekend, and he brought in staff, he brought in teachers, he brought in administrators on the Sunday, on the Monday of the holiday weekend. That next week, every single night he was working late, was in meetings trying to figure these things out. I don't regret the decision we made at all. I think we brought in the right person to help right the ship in the middle of a crisis. And it was imperative that the right person be at the helm to fix the mistake that was starting to sink us, to put it bluntly. Moving forward, you know, he has been very open in the sense of communication. And, you know, I want to stop for a quick second too and make sure that the community understands that we have many, many, many forms of ways to communicate with us, because I know that seems to be an area that people are concerned with. And I said in my opening here that, you know, one of the reasons I ran for this board originally was to make sure that we were open and transparent. And we are. And this community forum has been on the schedule since July. You know, we set this, and this is one of the things that I, spearheaded back 5-6 years ago, was to make sure that we got community forums where the board and the district had that opportunity to have a two-way conversation with the public. And it would have been very easy to cancel today's forum because, you know, if the rumors that were out there were true, you know, we'd want to hide behind our virtual screens here and not address the questions. But as you've seen over the last 2.5 hours, we're answering as best we can every single question. And as I started to say, it's very important that everybody understands that we are a 10,000 student population. We have 20,000 parents. So to communicate with 20,000 people in a forum like this is near impossible. And I appreciate everybody, especially because we're working with this doing virtually, to adjust and work with us on this format. I can't wait for the day that we're going to be back in person in a cafeteria having these two-way conversations and bouncing ideas back and forth off everybody and having two-way good, meaningful dialogue. But until that happens, it's these areas that the board is getting into that I got to encourage parents. If you don't think you're getting the communication you want, certainly pick up the phone and call the district. But I'm going to really encourage you to get into your local PTSA. That was the whole idea originally and still is today of the parent, teacher, student associations that every single school has. And every single board member sits on one of their or more of those PTSAs. And one of the agenda items that occur in these meetings is the opportunity for the principal to have a conversation and address everybody that's present of what's going on in that school, how things are changing, to answer questions. The board members that are liaisons to these PTSAs also are doing the exact same thing. And while it was uncomfortable, I myself sat in front of, or stood in front of probably 75, almost 100 people in the beginning of September at the South PTSA meeting that we held outside and answered as many questions as we possibly could. Yes, there's questions that I know the public wants answers to, and you'll get them eventually. Right now, we can't address everything, but we're doing our best to make sure that as much information that can be out there is out there. We're not hiding. We're not standing behind our virtual screens. We're making sure that the answers are getting out there as best we can. And at a board meeting, we're hearing your concerns and we're taking action on them as best we can. We may not be able to address it right then and there, but as you see today, most of those questions, concerns, we have addressed as best as we can. We don't have all the answers. And it's a work in progress. And Dr. McKenna, I gotta give him a lot of credit and kudos because he's been adjusting on the fly, taking a lot of that feedback that the community's been giving, taking a lot of the feedback the board's been giving, teachers have been giving, administrators, and even suggestions and ideas from other communities, other districts, from BOCES, from the state, from everywhere, and trying to mold that into a plan that works great. So thank you, and I appreciate all the hard work that you're putting into it, because I know it's not a 40-hour-a-week job. You've been putting in 80 hours a week, and it's not going unseen.
Dr. Susan.
I certainly agree with what's been stated about all of the work that Dr. McKenna has jumped into and been leading us through. But I wanted to go back for just a second to the other piece of that question and state that I feel there is a lot of misinformation and lack of information out there. We did not pluck Dr. McKenna out from not having any background or any experience. I will state personally that I know that he has a very long, extensive, impressive resume of all of the things that he has accomplished and experienced throughout his years in administration. So I wanted to make sure that that was also pointed out.
Crystal.
Just really briefly, one of the things that was important to me as we were looking at an acting superintendent was finding an individual that could help rebuild the trust in this community and bring together all the different stakeholders in this community to help make good decisions moving forward and ensuring the best outcomes for our students. And I truly believe that Dr. McKenna has fulfilled that role thus far and will continue to fulfill that role.
Okay, one thing I want to point out that I'm not quite sure.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for your confidence and support in me. It means a great deal, and I wanted to just make sure I said that to you. And I want to say this to everyone in our community too, that it's my privilege to help and serve our district, and I will do so with all my heart and soul. And I will do everything in my power to make sure that our students get the very, very best educational experiences that they deserve. And I will not stop working hard every day that I'm privileged to be able to sit in this chair, because the education of our children is first and foremost. And I'm dedicated to make sure that that gets done every day. Thank you.
One thing I'm not quite sure was pointed out, the contract with Dr. McKenna was available on BoardDocs, if I'm correct about that, right? So just want to make sure I'm not revealing anything that's not public. The contract can be canceled by the Board of Education at any time. We are not required to pay Dr. McKenna one whole year's worth of salary. That's an annualized salary that he would receive, I'm guessing bi-weekly. So just so the public knows, the contract is tilted a little bit in our favor. He serves at our pleasure. As long as he's fulfilling his role, we would support him in that way, but we're not locked into paying him a large amount of money for a long period of time. I've seen some inaccurate information posted about that. Okay, so we do have one person on the board that wanted to speak that emailed us because her question had not been answered by email, I think. Kristen Ciccotti. Cacciati. God, I'm Italian and I'm not saying all these Italian names.
Worse. Can you hear me okay?
Hi.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm sure I was much more eloquent in my email. But as you guys know, I've been coming to board meetings, community forums, and talking to all of you about class sizes and the large class sizes that we have in Williamsville, and to reduce some of our class size guidelines. I know that we had a lot of great conversations. You guys asked a lot of great questions at board meetings, looking at not just the regular classroom, but also curriculum extension classes. And I think some of you expressed how surprised you were to see at how large some of those class sizes were. So my question is, I mean, obviously the pandemic is taking precedence right now, and I totally understand that. I'm a teacher. But I'm just wondering kind of where your views stand on the class size guidelines. And I'd especially like to hear from Dr. McKenna, since he was at those board meetings, but didn't really speak to that issue. Thank you.
Okay, anyone interested to speak to that? Ms. Levitt.
I'll just start off by saying that we know that there has been lots of talks about what our budget is going to look like in the future. And part of our advocacy, even at our last board meeting, was approving a letter to go out and to our legislators to support education stimulus, so that our 20% cut doesn't happen to all of our districts throughout the state. So from my point of view, if you have not voted by mail, please make sure that you vote on election day, because I do believe that we need to make sure that we have education as a priority, and that fair and equitable funding is made known, that this is something that we expect for our students. So that would be my piece of it. In terms of the specifics with the district, I would have to defer to Dr. McKenna.
What I would say is about the class size guidelines is something we'll review with the leadership team and the administrative group with the principals. I don't know when the last time that they were reviewed and revised and thoroughly discussed, but I will bring it to the leadership team and the principals for discussion.
Okay, Dr. McClary.
Just really quickly, Kristen being defensive, I reviewed the emails that we received through the slot that was set for today, and there was none from you. So perhaps you sent it somewhere else. So I'm sorry if we didn't get back to you in a different way.
Yeah, our apologies. We definitely weren't trying to leave you out. I want to personally thank you for all of your advocacy, because I know that prior to the pandemic, you were a regular attending our board meetings and a steadfast advocate for class size. So thank you.
Michael.
I think every board member here, and I can't speak for Dr. McKenna because we haven't known each other that long, but I think every board member here agrees with lowering class sizes. But it goes, every district does. And it goes back to vote, 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 vote. Because without that, depending on who's in office, the districts might be losing that funding. And you also have to talk to your legislative representatives, because there's certain stipulations school districts have to follow within the budget lines that hinder the ability to generate revenue. And those are things, you got to talk to your legislature, state legislature, making sure school funding is funding appropriately.
Teresa.
So at this time, I just want to thank everyone. We have run up our clock now. We're almost at 12 o'clock. We are going to stop at this time. I know our district calendar said 9 to 12, and even though we spoke about 9 to 11 at the planning session, and that's what was out on the flyer. So we were able to give you the extra hour, which I am grateful that was able to happen. I do see a few little blue hands, so my sincere apology that we cannot go further. But I am spokesperson for the board, and I just want you to know that on behalf of the board, I'm a parent, and I can tell you that each of us is very dedicated to our role. We are volunteers, however, I do not mean that with any lack of seriousness for that. I am in conversations with Dr. McKenna several times a day, and I'm here at district office now several times a week. And I know that many of our board members are increasingly active, because this is a serious situation that we want to right. And I want to thank the community for the thoughtful emails that have come in. I want to thank our PTSA parents for being willing to be part of this journey with us in our partnership. Please join your PTSA if you have not already done so. That is the proper parent group for us to have communication with. There is a process of communication that Dr. McKenna has spoken about. And thank you to my board members. Thank you to Mrs. Carey and for Mr. Filipowski, who are running the camera and the computer. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of this beautiful weekend. Thank you, everyone, and be well.